Hello, hello, hello. How are we all doing? OBS. OBS, you're supposed to do the transition when I press the button, you know. OBS, why are you not doing the transition when I press the button? Dang it! I have to press the button myself. There we go then. There we go. We've transitioned over. Welcome, 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 welcome. How are we all doing this afternoon? It's not a quiz night. I mean, it's a night somewhere in the world, but at the moment it's an afternoon here in the UK. How are we all doing? The weather is rather meh outside. It's decidedly meh. I don't really want to do anything outside today. It's just not fun. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's just quickly say hello to everyone. We've got Dr. Mummy A. Joe. Welcome, Pop Rum Comedy. All of the raiders from Quizzy Dan. Thank you for the raid. I hope you had fun with doing some crossword solving. Hello there, Matt. Hello there, Shimjunik. Hello there to DC Simmons. Hello also to Vroom. And I already said Dr. Mummy. And Drahuska. Hello there. And it's just turned sunny over in Bristol. Well, there you go. That's lucky for you, I guess. It's very dismal and grey still here in Sheffield. You're grabbing the catch-up package, yes. So if you're not up to speed on the week 1 stuff, then you can go and grab the week 2 package from my Discord over in the Unity Workshop. You should be able to use the command !Unity Workshop to get a link to that. And yeah, that will take you to basically get you a package of exactly what I did by the end of the first week stream, which we'll just quickly talk about where we're up to here. So we got through the basics of how working with the scene view works, how to work with very basic 3D stuff, which we're not really going to be touching any more of until much later on because we're just dealing with 2D UI. We got to adding in some images. You can see we've got a dog in, we've got Whiskers the cat, we've got a box as well. Oh yeah, we also talked about how you can do 9 slicing on boxes, so you can sort of stretch them out to whatever size you want and it will all work and the borders will stay as they are without being squished. We also looked at adding in some text with TextMesh Pro, as you can see here with names, that they fit the box nicely so that whatever the name is, in fact if I do this and replay it and I change the name of dog to be dog, a long name here, as we proved earlier in the previous stream, now hit play, then it fits dog, a long name here perfectly in that box. It gets a bit squished, but you can still read it. We also had a scoring system, so all of these podiums can add some points. I think if I remember rightly, we did actually add some key commands to these. So these are all on the start set of the QWERTY keys, I believe. So add some points to dog, a long name here. I'd press the letter Q on my keyboard, and they can grant a single point on that. Mrs. Yako was on W, so click that and press the W key, and you get some points on that. Whiskers was with E, and box was with R. We looked very basically on how to do a button. As you can see, add 10 points button here on the dog. So if I click that, then I can give dog 10 points. Nice and simple like that. We also very, very quickly looked into animation, but only very briefly. So we've got a moving cat up here who has a animation state tree, which if I open up with window, animation animator, because there is a difference between animation, which is used for designing each individual animation, and then there's animator, which controls how all the animations work alongside each other. We get this tree here where we have fly in and fly out. Currently we are in the fly in state, as is indicated by this blue bar. By the way, this blue bar only appears when you have this auto live link option on, which by default it is on, but it's always good to have on because it allows you to debug any animation issues that you might have, because you'll be able to see exactly where you are in the state tree. Currently we're in fly in, and we have a parameter saying whether we are in or not. So let me just drop this tab out so we can see what we're doing with the game. You should be able to just do by holding on the tab with the left mouse button and dragging out. You can also pin it to wherever else you want as well. As you can see here, you can pin it to wherever there is already a tab, or you can have it as a free floating window. And if we tick the in option, then Whiskers will go out and animate back out. And if we tick it again, then Whiskers will animate back in. That's a very basic animation. We will do a bit more animation later on. But the first thing I want to do is actually want to bring in a new font, because although images are really easy to drop in and swap out and to work with in Unity, fonts, you have to do a couple of extra steps to make them work with TextMesh Pro, or at least make them work in a nice way. Unfortunately, you can't just drop a TTF or OTF in and away you go. You have to do an extra step. So, first of all, let's get ourselves a font. So, I'm just going to go to my favourite resource at the moment, is fonts.google.com. Also, yes, Whiskers is there, and we'll be heading to sleep shortly from the looks of things. I was just jumping around a moment ago. So we're just going to get a font. I don't know what font we're going to get, but you know what, Alata looks okay actually. We might use Alata, but choose whatever font you want to do. Depends on, you know, if you want to support many characters in it, with different diacritics or different locales. I'm going to sneeze in a moment, or I'm not. I hate it when that happens. But I'm going to use this one for now because I'm not really that concerned about massive support for different characters. So we're going to go for this font. We're going to download the family. Kirsty, it evens out. That's sort of it, yeah. So we open up Alata, and we have a TTF, and it will accept a TTF file. So if we go to Documents, Programming, go to my Unity Workshop folder, Assets, into my _game folder, because that was my sort of recommendation, is to do that, just to have a different folder for all your game stuff specifically, because all of these other ones here are different plugins or extensions for Unity, and they'll have their own folders. And I like to have underscore at the front of the name so that it then gets alphabetized first, so you always have your game content at the top ready to go, and you don't have to worry about, oh, where's my game stuff again? So I do _game, and let's drop that font in here. So let's extract Alata regular and drop that into there, and open it up into Unity again, and you will see it knows what it is, and it knows it's got some font information, but this isn't enough for TextMesh Pro to work with. Yes, you will need to put fonts in your assets. It does not read from the Windows fonts folder because that is not consistent on other platforms. So on Unix and on Mac, they don't have the same kind of font folder system. I mean, there is an implementation to do that, but it's not how it works. So basically, everything you need to do with Unity, if you want to use it as an asset, you have to drop it in explicitly as an asset in your project. You can't just have it magically referenced to something in the Windows fonts folder, for example. So if you do have a font in the Unity fonts folder that you want to use, then you should be able to get to that through, I think, the control panel route. So if you go to control panel and then go to fonts, and you should be able to get to the folder of fonts, find the font you want to use, and then copy that out as necessary. There's obviously, if you're concerned about legal issues and licensing issues with certain fonts, you will need to worry about that. That's why I tend to use the Google font stuff, because most of the time those licenses are reasonable for what I need to use. Yeah, so just bear in mind any fonts that you do use. If you're particularly worried about licensing issues, then be careful about taking them directly from Windows or taking them directly from Adobe, because there are rules on those. But yeah, any fonts you need to use, you will need to drop them into your project folder, into the assets specifically, not the project folder, the assets specifically. So we have this font. Now we need to convert that into a TextMesh Pro font. So to do that, we will need to go to Window at the top here, and then go to TextMesh Pro, and then go to the Font Asset Creator. So we'll be creating a font asset out of the font. Okay, and then it's going to give you some options here. So the source font file that we want, if we click the little circle icon, then we want to use the Alata regular that I've just dropped in. Alternatively, because this is like any other property, you can also drag the asset from the assets folder into there. It goes blue because it accepts it as a valid drag drop operation. Let go, and that will work as well. Next option, sampling point size. It says auto sizing. I would probably recommend that, and you just leave that as auto sizing. Next one, we have a padding option with 8. Now, 8 is probably going to be okay for you, but it depends really on how much bordering, how much outlining, how much shadowing distance you want away from the main characters. Because what we're about to do is we're actually going to generate a text atlas. So we're going to create a texture that contains all the characters we want on it, and then TextMesh Pro will use that as basically a lookup to render the text. And the more padding you include at this point, then the more the greater the range that you have for moving a shadow around or moving an outline around. So 8 is probably going to be good enough for you, but that will depend on number of characters you'll end up importing in, and also compared to the Atlas resolution. Next option is packing method fast. I think for the time being, because it might take a while depending on your machine, fast will probably get you there, no problem. But if you are absolutely 100% concerned with performance at the end, then go with Optimum. I would probably say start with fast just to get going, and then if you need to do a final optimization path at the end, then redo them as Optimum and it'll pack them better. But I would leave it on fast for now. Atlas resolution. Now, this is the size of the texture that it'll generate, and this is entirely dependent, completely dependent on how many characters you need to have in your font at the end. So we're going to be using extended ASCII, or about as many of those extended ASCII characters as we can get out of the font. As we saw on Google Fonts, there's not many, so there's actually not going to be many characters that it's going to pick out. If we compare that to, let's say, Roboto or Roboto Condensed, I know that has a lot of characters in it. It has many more characters. It's got a lot of Cyrillic characters in, for example, and Greek. Then it will take up more of that texture space. What the auto size will do is it will try and keep resizing the characters until all of the characters can fit reasonably well at the same size in this resolution of texture. 1024 by 1024 is probably going to be good enough. However, if you are wanting to do a Chinese character set or a Japanese character set, then you're probably looking more towards 4K textures, so 4096 by 4096, and even then you're probably looking at multiple of those as well. This does allow doing multiple in a sort of way you have to manually finagle it, but for our purposes in English speaking world, for this example test, we're just going to go with 1024 by 1024, and we're going to use the extended ASCII character set for the time being. You might also be thinking, why 1024? That's a weird number, isn't it? So it's a power of 2 number. All of these numbers here are power of 2 numbers. When it comes to textures and rendering engines, the render engines really love it to be a power of 2 size texture. Hello there, Samsung, welcome. So anything that isn't a power of 2, it will. It's not that it will struggle. It's just that it won't prefer it. That there's certain optimizations in rendering systems that are purely aimed for power of 2s. Also, along those lines, they do also prefer square power of 2s as well. I mean, you can generate a texture that is 2048 by 1024 and be okay with that. But again, it will try and always prefer a square power of 2 texture size. Now, coming down here to these sprites, we didn't really care about the size of these sprites. This one's at 128, so I actually did that one as a power of 2 completely by accident. Labrador got generated as a power of 2 with 512 from the website, but Milky Way, that's just a 1920 by 1079, so it's a really weird number, and it says here NPOT, if you can read that text. I don't know how well you can read that text on stream, but at the bottom it says NPOT, which stands for Oh, hang on, we have a subscription first. I can't hear the subscriptions in this mode.
Only 2 more months until we have our second Twitch baby, Ash. Also hashtag pets for whiskers.
We're just waiting for it to play out. And I think we should be okay. Thank you very much for the 16th month resub there, Egg. Only 2 more months until we have our second Twitch baby, Ash. Also pets for whiskers. Oh, you want some pets for whiskers? Oh, wow. She was headbutting that then. There you go. Meow to you too. But thank you very much for the 16th month resub there, Egg. Greatly appreciated. And yes, only 2 months away from the second Twitch baby. So yeah, it says NPOT down here. It stands for not power of 2 or non-power of 2. It's just there as a reminder to say this isn't in a most preferable format, but we'll deal with it. Now, with sprites, it's okay because Unity will actually try and pack multiple sprites into a sprite sheet. Much like what we're about to do with this font here, the Unity system will pack multiple sprites into a sprite sheet, which will then be in a favourable power of 2 square size texture. It'll try and figure out what that is. Yeah, it'll try and do that under the hood. You won't see that happen, but it will try and do that. And I've activated the whiskers. Hello, whiskers. Meow. Okay. No, you don't want to be held. Okay. You okay? You can go back to sleep there, you know. You can go back to sleep if you want. Okay? You can go back to sleep. Yes, that background fill is off by 1 Tansar, but that's just as I got it. It downloaded as a 1079 for some reason. So yeah, sprite system, you don't need to worry about it because it will generate sprite atlases in the background for you to make it better for the rendering engine. Okay, back to font asset creation because we haven't even generated it yet. Character set, as I said, extended ASCII. If you want different character sets, then here you go. You can specify different characters if you know what ones you want. If you've got a file with all of the characters that you need to generate with, you could also specify that. If you know what your Unicode ranges are by their numbers or by their hexadecimal values, then put them in as well. Just do what you need to do. I'm going to go with extended ASCII. Render mode. Now, SDFAA. What the heck is SDFAA? So, SDFAA stands for, I believe, Signed Distance Field Anti-Aliased. And you're thinking, what the hell does that even mean? I will say, don't worry about it. If you're really interested to know what a signed distance field is, then you can Google that. If you want to know what anti-alias is, then you can also Google that. Either way, do not worry about it. Just leave it on SDFAA and all will be good. Hexadecimal is a safe word, fair enough. Thanks for tuning in though, Shimjunik. Google that, you say. Yes, this one, you're allowed to Google that because we're not quizzing at the moment. Also, go and watch the stream later. And get kerning pairs is ticked. This is useful for those particular cases in the fonts where characters need to be closer together than they normally should be when they're getting with specific kerning information. So to get that information out of the font, if there is any, then do tick the option for get kerning pairs so that your text format's slightly better. Now, with all of those options out of the way, we can hit the button to generate the font atlas. So let's do that. And, well, that didn't take long at all. I thought that was going to take a little while, but apparently not. Nope, that's all. It's done. And it's generated, completed in 0.2 of a second, apparently. And it tells you all of the characters that it didn't manage to find or didn't manage to generate for the font. Because these will be part of the extended character ASCII set, but are not in the font or something along those lines. But I think that looks okay for what we need to use. It's got all of the main alphanumerics. It's got some punctuations in there. It's got different styles of punctuation as well. I can see 3 different quote mark styles there, which is nice. As long as it generates A to Z and 0 through 9 for most people, then yes, you'll probably be okay. But that looks okay. It's even got the yen symbol as well. Why not? And the registered trademark. So I think we're okay with that. So we are going to save that. So let's hit save. and it's going to ask us where we want to save it. Now, it's suggesting the name of Alata Regular SDF. The name it's suggesting is basically the name of the font, space, and then SDF, because we've just generated a SDF, or signed distance field font. You can call it that if you want. I would probably... I think we'll just go... Because I don't need the word regular in there. I'm just going to leave it as Alata SDF, I think. We'll just do Alata SDF. So I'm going to save that as that. You can name that whatever you want. And that's saved. The atlas disappears, but that's fine. And we are done here, so we can close the window out. But we now have this asset called Alata SDF. And this is a font asset file that we can then use with our TextMesh Pro elements. So let's quickly go and do that. We'll go into one of the podiums where we've got some names. So let's go on to the name. So we've got the Bob in podium blue name. Let's go to the scene view actually, so you can see what we're doing. So I have name selected, which is Bob, and I'm going to press F on the keyboard to focus in on it so we can see it nice and clearly. And you can use mouse wheel up and down to zoom in and out. And we're going to change the font. So down here we have font asset is currently pinned to Liberation Sans SDF, which is the default font that TextMesh Pro provides as part of its package. So we're going to change that. We're going to change that number to, that asset to the one we've just generated, Alata SDF. Click that and then close. And just like that, we are now using that asset. So we can go Bob with a long name, and there you go. It's now using that font. Wonderful. Cool. Now, other thing to worry about, which I did mention before, I think. I don't know. Yes, I did mention it before, but I'm going to reiterate it again in a moment. Oh, hang on. Took me a little while to find the font asset creator. At first, I was with Alata selected, hitting. What's different there? Wasn't setting any options, but it seemed to create a plausible object. So you did, with this selected, you went assets, create, TextMesh Pro font asset, and it creates this. Does this have an... So the thing you'll see that it hasn't done is if you open up the asset, they have sub-assets inside of it. So this is the one that is just generated via your routes there, Matt. And it's got this, which is the material, which it will have. Each of them will have a material. But it also has this, which is the texture, or the atlas that generates. And you can see it's actually a 0x0 texture. So this font asset has no texture information. So it won't be able to render anything with the static data. So that is going to be a bit of a problem. I wonder if it'll be a dynamic style. So the reason that this font asset might work, though, is that it will use the dynamic population mode. This is a relatively recent addition to TextMesh Pro. Previously, TextMesh Pro, you had to always bake all of your font data ahead of time. And you couldn't add in, you couldn't add in new characters at runtime. It couldn't do that. However, they now have dynamic option, and by default, it would seem it's generated a font asset with the dynamic population mode. So what that will mean is, as you use the font in real time, in runtime, it will add characters to the texture as you go on. It probably won't save the texture over time, but it will just keep adding it at runtime. So there's the flexibility there in that you don't have to bake the characters ahead of time, but also there's a slight performance penalty because then it has to calculate any available texture space that it needs to fit those characters on the sheet. And if it then exceeds the size of the sheet, then I'll have to figure out to resize the texture or do something with the texture at runtime. So it's useful for any extra characters that you may not have thought about. But yeah, I'm just still in the habit of baking the texture information ahead of time so that I know that it all works, because that's what I'm used to in old TextMesh Pro. In the Unity version that I use for all of my games in 2018, this one isn't even an option at all to use yet, I think. Possibly as a beta option that is, but the one I have, it isn't an option at all, so I'm stuck in that mindset. So, although it may work for you, doing that is certainly an option you can follow. It's not the way I do it at the moment. Not necessarily saying that's the right way to do it. It's just not the way I do it. That's all. But either way, we have an asset, a text asset, with the base material, and the texture SDF there. And I was quickly going to go over making a variant on this font material, because as you can see, it's all well and good. It's a nice font, but what if we wanted to have some glow, or what if we wanted to have an outline around this text? Well, we could tweak these numbers here, but these numbers, hang on, let me select the right thing. Let me select the name first so we're not confusing things. So we've got the name, and we can start tweaking these values, but this is the default font for everything that uses this font. If you want to create a separate material so that you don't affect all of the text elements that use the same font, then, as I mentioned on my previous stream, you need to create a material preset. To do that, come down to where the material is defined here, this Alata SDF material part, and then these three buttons here. Click the triple dot symbol, and then we're going to create a material preset from that. And that creates us a separate material, which is called Alata SDF. And then what we need to do is we need to preserve that part of the name to start with. It always has to start with the name of that font asset that we use. That's a restriction on TextMesh Pro. And then add on to that the name that you want to add to it. So we're going to have this be a glow. So Alata SDF, and I'm going to say glow on the end of that. Okay, go back to the name asset, the name element in the scene. And now, if we select the material preset, it should give us Alata SDF glow as an option. I'm going to click that, and now it's using that. Obviously, nothing's changed because we've just copied the base properties. But now we can start tweaking these without affecting the base properties. So we're going to add a glow. So let me tick on glow, and we're going to expand it out so we can see more of the information. We're going to make it a sort of yellowish, glowish like that. And let's go outer. We'll get an outer glow like that, so we get a nice glow effect going. And we'll change the power on it a bit so it's not as bright. A bit like that. And if you want to, you can also offset the glow as well. So if you want some transparency before the glow starts, then you can do that as well. And you get this sort of, I guess you could call it neon effect if you have it on the inside. I'm going to leave that at 0, so there's no edge between. And you know what? I'm going to leave that as it is for that font. Cool. Zoom back out a bit. Now, as you see, we didn't make those changes to the other 3. We only made the change to this one podium. So let's quickly change those others. Little shortcut there that I just did to expand multiple at the same time is select one of them, podium green, and then if you shift select the bottom one, then it selects all of them in between as well. So we've got podium green, white and red selected together there. And then to open them all up, I'll just press the right arrow key. So in the hierarchy, you can use the left and right arrow keys to sort of open and collapse the hierarchy. And you can do that on multiple elements selected at the same time. So with all those selected, then you can open them up, collapse it down with the left and right arrow keys as necessary. And then we're going to select name, name, and name on all 3 of the podia. This is what I came for. Yeah, shortcuts are useful. I actually don't use too many keyboard shortcuts, but there'll certainly be like usability shortcuts that I do have that I do follow along with that might be useful. So we've got the other 3 names selected. And we're going to change the font asset over to Alata, and then we're going to change the material to Alata SDF Glow. And just like that, now we have changed the font to the one that we desire, and with the rendering style that we desire as well. That should be all you need to worry about. Another thing to note is that we didn't generate any information to do with bold text and italic text. So if we just, for example, let's look back at the podium blue and focus back on Bob on here. Now, you can select bold, and it does an okay job at sort of guessing what bold is. And if you select italic, it does an okay job of doing italics, but you can see that the kerning gets a bit screwed up between some of the characters on the italics, because it's nice and even here, but then when you're in italics mode, really the O should be closer to the capital B, and the lowercase b should be further away. Now, this font that I picked, Alata, is a bad example for this, because unfortunately it only has a regular family, regular style. Now, if I were to do this, let's just do another example then with a font that I know has more support. I'm going to use Roboto because it's the de facto font on Android. It just works. So I'm going to download the Roboto family, and we'll just quickly do an example of the Roboto so you can see how to set up additional styles. Open up that, and as you can see, it's got a lot of styles. I am just going to be concerned with, for the time being, I'm going to do medium italic, bold, and bold italic. Those four that I'm going to pick. But you can pick all of them if you need to, or whatever you want. So I'm just going to drop those into my assets in the _game folder again, and let Unity do its thing. So we now have these 4 Roboto assets. You know what? This folder is getting a bit messy, I guess. Maybe. We'll tidy it up afterwards. So what we'll do is we're going to go Window, TextMesh Pro, Font Asset Creator. So let's create some more fonts, shall we? So we're going to pick Roboto. Which Roboto do I want to pick? I can't really read the names. So by default, it uses this sort of thumbnail layout, which is nice for picking images because then you can see the image at a glance. However, for looking for a font name, not very useful. So if you look over here to the right, there's a slider that allows you to sort of zoom in the thumbnails or zoom out. And if you zoom out all the way, then you go into list view mode instead, so you actually get to see the full name of the asset you want. You can also type the name of the asset that you think you want as well, but that's there as a useful thing there. So you either view the image as a thumbnail there with part of the name, or if you want to see the full name, then move the slider all the way to the left and you get to see the full name. I'm going to start with Roboto Medium, so that's sort of the base kind of font style. So Roboto Medium I'm going to start with. I'm going to leave those settings as they were. I'm going to generate, and that has been generated like that. And I'm going to save that as... now, because we are going to have different styles, then I am going to include medium in this case in the name. So I'm going to leave it as Roboto Medium SDF. Okay, that's done. Now let's do it again. Now let's do it for medium italic style, and we'll generate that. And we're going to save that with Roboto Medium Italic SDF. And that's done. And let's do it for bold. So it's a bit of a faff having to generate the texture like this, but if you don't want to do that, then you can just create the font asset and use the dynamic mode if you feel you're okay with that. I just do this out of habit now these days. And bold italic, generate that. So we have a full family generated. What we can do now then is start to associate those assets together. Again, in this asset view, this also has the slider for... There it is. There's the sneeze. It was a long time coming. There it was. So yeah, the asset view here also has the same slider for viewing thumbnails and viewing lists. So I'm just going to scroll out so we can see the full names again. And let's select the medium SDF asset that we generated, because again, medium is sort of like the base level of this particular font. And we can see that we've got this section here called font weights. And what this allows us to do is specify any other font assets that we have to associate to different font weight styles or different italic styles. So it basically assumes that the one we have selected here is the regular 400 regular style. That's non-italic. That's fair enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in the italic style, which is medium italic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag from the assets folder here. So drag Roboto medium italic SDF into the regular italic typeface entry, like that. Let go. And then we're going to do the same for bold. So Roboto bold SDF, going to drag that and drop that into the bold regular typeface. And then bold italic, I'll select that, drag that, and drop that into bold italic. And just like that, they are now associated. So, just to make it as a nice simple example, I'm going to change the score. We're going to change the score to that font. So we're going to change that to Roboto Medium. Again, Roboto Medium was the base fonts that we wanted to use. So Roboto Medium is what we're going to select. And you'll actually see it's already using that font asset. Because you can see the slant of this font is different to the auto-generated slant that TextMesh Pro would do. So this slant here is actually based off of the italic typeface rather than the auto. In fact, I can probably demonstrate that. Let me quickly do that. I'm going to take it off of that. Let me go back to medium, and I'm going to just disable this briefly. So I'm going to set that back to none, so you can see the difference. So that there is the TextMesh Pro's auto-generated italic style. As you can see, it's very italic. The sort of the slant angle is quite extreme. And then you compare that against the default one that is part of the asset. If I drop Roboto Medium Italic back in and then set that back to italic, that looks more reasonable. That is what is in the font asset. So I think we're going to leave that there with on Roboto Medium in bold style. So that's actually Roboto Bold that's now using. And we'll just do that change on all the other scores. So select the other scores by clicking them and then control clicking to add more to the selection. You can also do shift click, but that does a sort of list select like that rather than an individual element select. So hold control to select multiple elements without selecting the ones in between. And go to font asset, change that to Roboto Medium, and then change it to the bold style, and that is that. That's now using Roboto Bold, technically, because we are using the bold font style here, using under the Roboto Medium asset. So, anyone have any questions there on font assets, adding them into Unity and working with them? Anyone have any anything to ask about? Or are you good to move on? No, we have fewer people today than before. Do you have to create a glow material for each version, normal, bold, italic? Now, luckily not, Dan, because we've made the association ahead of time. So long as we make the material for the base level font, then that will apply to all the other styles that we have associated. So yes, you do not need to worry about creating a different material preset for all those different things. Let me quickly demonstrate that. So with this font here, the Roboto Medium SDF, let's create a material preset from that, and we'll rename this one as we'll use a heavy shadow on this. So Roboto Medium SDF, we have to keep the front name intact so that TextMesh Pro knows what to do with it, and then we're going to add on to the end of that heavy shadow as sort of the key name for it. We then go back to the score elements that we were editing. Make certain that it's using SDF Heavy Shadow. It is. And then we're going to give it a very strong underlay, which is what they use. So it's an underlay level. We're going to shift it all the way to the right, shift it all the way down. Remember that the Y direction in Unity in the UI is upwards rather than downwards. Think of it as like a chart. And then we're going to make it fully opaque shadow, and we're going to also dilate it a lot as well, so it's sort of like projecting into the background. Should I make it slightly soft? We'll make it slightly soft. There we go. So that there is, because we're actually using the bold fonts, where it's already demonstrating that it's using that material correctly, so you don't need to generate any special ones for bold or italic or bold italic. And just for consistency, I'm going to apply the same change to the other 3 scores so that they are also using the heavy shadow. And there we go, they are now all consistent. And always hit save, Control S, and save project to make certain everything is saved. I feel like I probably need a subfolder for just fonts, but that's just me. Well, Pop Rhyme Comedy, we're about to talk about that. Already started to colour outside the lines with this, so definitely some file management. Yeah, I was umming and ahhing before I moved on to doing the fonts, but now was definitely the time to do so, because we are starting to get there. So there are obviously many ways that you can asset manage here. You don't have to go any particular way, but what I tend to do is the following. So I would tend to have a folder, which you can go by right-clicking in the assets folder, go and create folder, or I think you can also go assets at the top here, create folder. Yep. So first of all, I'm going to create a folder, and we're going to have sprites in there. Sprites or textures, whichever you want to use. In that particular term, there's technically sprites in the UI. And then what I'm going to do is let me select all the sprites that we have. So we've got box, we've got the Labrador head, we've got the background, which is technically a sprite, we've got the podiums, and we have the queen. I just selected all of those with control and left click each time. And then I'm going to drag all of those into the sprites folder. And luckily, Unity is okay with you doing that, because Unity's asset system works off of asset GUIDs, GUIDs, rather than their strict name. So you can move assets around in the Unity asset folder, and everything will be fine. If you move things in Windows Explorer, you can have a bad time. Now, I will look here. So, now, there is a slight caveat. You can do it in Windows Explorer if you're careful, but I would say for beginners, don't, unless you know what you're doing. I would just say, if you want to move assets around in Unity, do it inside of the Assets Explorer inside of Unity. You can do it in Windows Explorer, but I'm not going to cover it, because although the necessary information is there for be able to move it around, I'm just not going to mention it. Is there any requirement to keep associated files together with one another? The only case, Matt, is the thing I don't really want to mention, is these meta files. This .meta here, this has to exist exactly with the asset it comes with. This technically is the thing that tells Unity what this asset is and contains all of that GUID information. So you can move things around in Windows Explorer if you keep these things together with each other. But outside of that, no, they do not need to be at all next to each other. So you can theoretically have the original fonts and the generated font assets separate from each other. Next folder I'm going to create, just for some tidying up here, is fonts. We'll have some fonts. And I'm gonna move all of the font stuff in there, in fact. Except, no, we'll move the materials in as well. We'll see what we can do with that. So I'm going to drop all of those into the fonts folder. But I'm going to go into fonts and do some separation in fonts, because you can keep chaining folders here if you want to. So I'm going to create another folder. I'm going to go for original original fonts, and I'm going to drop those in as the original font files themselves. So that's Alata Regular, Roboto. Those could go into the original fonts folder. So if we needed access back to the TTFs, then we can do that, and they're there. But once we've generated these font assets, technically we don't need these TTFs anymore, but keep them around just in case anyway you need to generate them again. We're going to create another folder, and we're going to call that generated fonts. I think that's a reasonable term for it, generated fonts. And we're going to put in the generated font assets that we've made, and we're going to drag those into the generated fonts folder. And then I'm also going to create a folder in here, and we're going to go for materials. So these are the special materials that we've created for the fonts, and I'm going to drop in Alata and Roboto Medium into the materials folder, like that. So now we've got a bit of tidiness going on there. So we've got the original fonts in here, if we need access to them. We have the generated font assets here. We have the materials that we've created here. And then we've got the sprites that we've made here. And the rest we've got left now is, well, let's create some more folders, just get ahead of the time then. So create a folder, and I'm going to create a folder called scripts. And that is going to be where we put all of our scripts into, all of our programming. So at the moment we only have Podium, but we will have some more later on. So we'll drop in Podium into scripts, and they'll be fine. However, because we moved a script asset, Unity will recompile everything. It's just a sanity check to make certain that you haven't done anything completely bad. But anytime you move a script asset around in the assets, Unity will trigger a rebuild just to be certain everything is okay. And the last thing we've got here is some animations. So I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it animations. And I'm going to move fly in and moving cat into animations. And that's all nice and tidy at the moment. So now we've moved everything into their respective folders, and everything is okay. Right, well, that's that bit covered. Anyone got anything they want to ask at this point before we move on to the next bit? Anyone want to talk about anything, or are we good to continue? I will take that silence as we're ready to continue. Okay, so I think what I'm going to start doing now is start to get this more towards a visualization of a game show and maybe do things. So I am going to take this now more towards the Panel Quiz Attack game that it's sort of trying to emulate at the moment, because we have those 4 colours. So that does mean we're now going to start thinking about making the panel quiz itself, and also things like doing a buzzer or buzz-in, or making a podium flash or something along those lines. So what I am going to do then is I'm going to get rid of the moving cat, because the moving cat isn't necessary for what we need, and I'm also going to remove the add 10 points button for the time being as well. So let's just delete that button so that everything is sort of consistent with what we've got. And now let's start adding to the grid at the top of the screen. So let's create a new element in Canvas. So with the Canvas element selected, hit right click, UI, and we'll create just a panel. Now, by default, it generates with a sort of transparent image, which may or may not be what you want. In this case, I don't want that. So with the panel now selected, as you can see, it's filled the entire screen. If I don't want the image, I can go to the image here and click the triple dot on the end here on the right, and I just want to remove it. So I'm going to remove the component. Now it doesn't have an image, but there's still a object here for what we need to do for our panel. Sorry, what do you need to add? So with the canvas element selected in the scene, all I went to do was right click, go to UI, and go to panel. Canvas is the top level object, so we don't want to add any more canvases, but this time we just want to add a panel, which is just basic. It's basically an image, but it just presumes it as being a full screen thing, and it generates it with, let me quickly just, oh, don't delete everything. It just generates it with a, as you can see, a sort of semi-transparent background, which in this case I don't want. So with this panel that we've added selected, go to the image component. Over to the right of it, there's the triple dot symbol. We click that, and I just want to remove the component. So select that, and the image is gone. Okay. What I'm going to do now is let's create an area where this grid is going to go. So I'm going to do this with anchors. So I want the grid to be 0.25 to 0.75. So it's going to be sort of like the middle half of the screen. So from 0.25 to 0.75. And then in terms of the top and down, we want the Y to be what? I'm trying to think of where they are. So 0.45. That looks about okay. And the top, we're going to have it up to... We'll have it right up to the flush end of the flush point of the screen. Yes, screen is the word I want to look for. And then reset everything back to 0 so that the edges all get aligned to those anchors. You know, at the top edge I'm going to move in by a few pixels. I'm going to move it down by 4 pixels because why not? Okay. And then, if you're not familiar with Panel Quiz Attack, it's a... let's really bring up the information on screen here. So Panel Quiz Attack here, as you can see there, just from that quick preview, if I just mute this and wait for the advert to play out, because I'm currently using a guest tab here, so it doesn't have the YouTube. Go away, YouTube Premium. We'll quickly look at a screenshot of it there. There we go. As you can see there, it's got a 5x5 grid with numbers 1 through 25. So we want something that is a grid layout, ideally. That'd be a nice thing to do. So, luckily, Unity has our back on this. So if we want to add in a grid, then we go add component on this panel. And we want to search for a grid layout group. So type grid. It will select this first thing called just grid. We don't want that. That's for something else. What we want is the grid layout group. If you select that, then, well, nothing really happens because we haven't got any children in here yet. But we are able to start defining the grid layout if we want to. Hello there, Quet. Welcome to this stream. There's no quizzing involved, but there is Unity tutorializing if you are interested in doing your own quiz content. So you're more than welcome to watch along if that's something that interests you. And as you saw in here, they're basically just coloured boxes. So what I'm going to do is, you know what, I'm going to create a simple box image in Paint.net. So let's go image, resize. This really doesn't need to be that big, so I'm going to make this, what, 16 by 16, because we can 9 slice it later to stretch it to whatever size we want. I have a quick question for what I saw last night. That's okay. Absolutely, Quets. Yeah, no problems if you've got anything. How do you show the Discord icons show up on my stream layout? No, that's not Unity. That is, just as a quick aside, it's the Discord OBS. It's not really a plugin. It's Discord overlay. So go to streamkit.discord.com/overlay. Select install for OBS. It doesn't actually install anything. It's just literally a browser widget. You would select the server that you're part of on here. Select all the information you need, and then it will generate you a link on the right that you then copy and then paste into your browser layout. Now, the layout that Discord generates is a vertical layout, and there's no way of making it horizontal. But if you look at my stream, you'll find it's horizontal. The reason for that is I've got some extra CSS in the browser component that allows me to rejig the HTML and make it into a horizontal layout. So if you're interested in that information, I think I've posted it somewhere in my Discord. Otherwise, I'll find the CSS later for you, and I'll be able to share that information with you. But yeah, this is the basics for getting a simple... The one you want specifically is a voice widget, by the way, rather than a status widget. A voice widget gives you the status symbols for everyone in a voice call. So there you go. Not a Unity thing. It is just a Discord thing. Back to the matter at hand. Let's create a quick texture for our panel. It's just going to be a box with some dark edges. So we're going to go zoom in a bit, and that's not anti-alias. We'll make it 2 pixel bit wide thing, like that, and that. There we go. Nice simple box. I'm going to save that. Match game. Go to Unity Workshop, Assets, Game. Go to the Sprites folder that we created earlier, and we're just going to call this a... well, we can't call it a box because we have a different box, but we're going to call this a blank box. There you go. We're going to have a blank box, and we'll save that. Come back to Unity because now we need to 9 slice it. So now we go to blank box in the sprites, and we need to 9 slice it so we can stretch them out to whatever size we want. So with that asset selected, go to the sprite editor in the inspector, which opens up a new window for the sprite editor. And then you can either drag in the edges as you see fit. I drag them in by the border plus an extra pixel just to be sure, so that this doesn't get stretched. So I do that. So I've actually got edges of 3. Alternatively, you can just dial the numbers in yourself if you know the pixel values by hand. So you can do that. And this is also where you can manually set the pivot ahead of time for the sprite as well. But most of the time, it's going to be a center pivot. So with that done, can I bung the box up on Discord? Oh, I guess I can. I guess I could do that. Oh, such hardship. Sprites. Go to the Unity Workshop folder, and we're going to have a blank box for you. There you go. You have a blank box. There is a blank box for you. Look how small that is. There you go. There is a blank box for you. Completely out of context for everyone else, but that's fine because this is a Unity Workshop channel. Okay, with those done, with the edges brought in, I've hit the apply button, and now I can close the sprite editor window. Okay. Now let's start adding in some elements into this panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this I'm just going to add in one at the moment, and then once I'm happy with the style, I'll then copy it. So with the panel selected in the hierarchy or in the scene, you can right click, go to UI, and go to image, and it'll add an image. We want to change the sprite to our blank box, just like that. Doesn't really look like it's done much, except it does actually have a border. Probably a bit difficult to see on this background, this rather dark background, but it does actually have a border there. Okay, and you'll see it's generated with a sort of reasonable size 100 by 100. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to duplicate it multiple times so we get to see how it's laid out first. So let me duplicate it a few times. By the way, to duplicate a selection, make sure you have the selection made, and then you can do Control and D to duplicate. You can also do Control C, Control V. That does the same thing, but that's 2 keyboard commands when you can just do it in one with Control D. However, as I sometimes keep forgetting, be careful with Control D in the Windows Explorer, because that means delete. Control D in the Windows Explorer means delete. So yeah, it's a bit of a difference between duplicate and delete. So yeah, I have on occasion forgotten that I was in Windows Explorer and tried to duplicate something with Control D, and it ended up deleting it. Luckily, it's only one of those soft deletes, so it goes to recycled bin. But still, be careful. Just be careful. Let's create a few more. Now we need 25, so we're going to go up to image bracket 24 because the first one is just image and then it generates as image 1. So this is actually 25 images. As you can see, if we've got them all selected, it actually tells you down here that you have 25 images selected, and it also gives you a preview of each one. Now it's sort of doing it in a grid layout. As you can see, it's sort of wrapping around, and that's fine, but it's not quite right, is it? It's not quite the right number. So what we can do to start messing around with this is let's change the constraint. So at the moment it's all flexible, so it's just going to try and fit as many rows and columns in as it can. I'm actually going to change the constraint to a fixed column count. Yes, list widths. Basically anything that is on that element plus anything in its children gets duplicated. So if I had the canvas selected, for example, I could duplicate the entire canvas, and if you look in the hierarchy, then yeah, literally everything inside of it has been duplicated. So yeah, duplicate will copy any additional references it needs to. We go back to the panel. I'm going to change the constraint from flexible to fixed column count, because we know that with it being a 5x5, I want it to be 5 columns wide. So I'm going to change the constraint count of the fixed column count to 5. And, well, it's getting there. We've got a 5x5 grid. That's pretty good. Yeah, okay. It's okay. We could probably do better, but we can start messing around with the cell size now as well. So at the moment, you can see that the cell size is 100 by 100 because that is what that's what these images sizes are. Let's increase the size on the X so it fits a bit better. So we're just going to drag it out a bit until it feels reasonable. I'm going to go to about 180, and that looks about okay. You can go as wide or as narrow as you want. And we can also scale the Y up a bit. So I'm going to move the Y up a bit until that fits okay. I'm going to go to 115 for that. That looks reasonable to me. I'm okay with that. Now, as you see, it's pinned to the top left corner, which is fine in some cases, but at the moment, I would probably prefer this to be centered, because it just looks nicer if it's centered. So, luckily, again, there is a alignment option here. So, the option we're going to change here is child alignment, and we're going to change that from upper left alignment to middle center alignment. And if you select that, then everything gets nicely centered. So now we have a panel with 25 elements in it, and they're arranged in a nice 5x5 grid, and they are in sort of left to right, then down reading order. If you want to change the order so that it is top to bottom, then right reading order, then you can do that if you need to. That is where you would change the starting axis from horizontal to vertical. So if we did that, although you don't see anything change here because everything's the same, if we now go through and sort of enumerate each of the images, you can now see that they're going down the first column, then down the second column, then down the third column, which, might be useful in some cases. In our case, though, if we look at the reference for Panel Quiz Attack, theirs is read across the rows first as the major axis rather than the horizontal, rather than the verticals, the columns. So we're going to change that back to starting axis horizontal, and we're back in the order that we want. Now, I don't want to work with 25 images at once. 25 images at the moment. I just want to work on one of them. But we are now nicely sized so that when we do get to that point, then we're all good. So I've just selected the other 24 and just deleted it for the time being. So with this image selected, should I rename this? Yes, I should probably name the panel differently as well. So this is sort of like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename the panel. So with panel selected, I'm going to hit F2, which is sort of the standard shortcut on Windows for renaming. And I'm going to rename that as a grid. Alternatively, if you don't want to use the keyboard shortcut, you can go over to the right hand side in the inspector where you see the name, and change the name there. Or I think you can also do a long left click, which you can do on Windows. Do a long left click, and then it brings up the rename option. Rename that as grid, and then I'm going to rename the image as a individual panel, because it's technically 25 panels in the game. So that is going to be a panel now, which I know confusing from earlier because we started with a panel and now we don't, but just go with me. What Unity calls a panel is not what we're calling a panel in our game. Let's put it that way. So we have a panel. Each panel, as you can see, will get coloured differently. They get coloured based on the podium colours, which we'll get to in a moment. So having that be white is fine, because we can tint that whatever colour we want with the colour option. So you can see we can just sort of tint that to whatever colour we feel like tinting it to. But it does also have a number. It does have a number inside of the panel. So let's add a text element to that. Yeah, just go with me. To be fair, a lot of these basic tutorials are just go with me and don't ask questions. But if you feel like asking questions to yourself or asking questions to me, and you just want to be curious, then that's absolutely fine. I don't mind a bit of curiosity here and there. So with the panel selected, go to UI, and we'll go to Text Mesh Pro. We want to make this a Text Mesh Pro element. So done that, and I'm going to rename this ahead of time. So with that selected, pressed F2, and I'm going to change that to say number. Now, white text on a white background is a bit difficult to read. It's a bit difficult. Panic 25, it is indeed Stoshka. Yes, indeed. We are sort of on our way to doing Panel Quiz Attack 25. So, yeah, white text on a white background, a bit difficult to read. So let's change the vertex color of the text and change that from white to black, and now we can read it. It's also, it's not quite fitting how we want. So let me first do the trick that we always use. Click on the anchor presets option, which opens up this. Hold Alt and Shift, and then click the stretch option in the bottom right corner, and that fits it to the size of its parent perfectly like that. And we will want to center align the text. So going to alignment, we go to center and middle to align the text like that. It is also going to be a number, so we'll use the biggest number as the example so that we know it can fit 2 digits. So we'll put in 25. It's basically a weird mix because we're using Jeopardy podiums at the moment, but yeah, it is what it is, Stoshka. It's a bit of a mix. It's just an example anyway. It's not supposed to be anything specific, although we are tending towards now the logic of Panel Quiz Attack now. So fits that. We're going to change the font though. Changing the font, we're going to use... we'll use Roboto because we're using Roboto for the numbers, so that feels consistent to me. And I'm going to use the heavy shadow option as well. Should I use the heavy shadow option? I don't know, because black with a black shadow maybe not what I want. So I think for the time being I'm not. I'm going to leave it as it is, but I am going to make it bold text. And 36 is a bit small, I would say, for the text size in here. So I'm just going to ramp that up to one that feels right. I think 80, a font size of 80 for my current situation feels okay. Again, that might vary for you because I'm working on a 1920 1080 project. You might be working on a different size. So if you need to have it a different size, then do bear that in mind. Okay. And I think that's all we need to worry about for the panel at the moment. Oh, no. There's one other thing we need to do ahead of time so that we're not getting stuck later. We need to convert this into a button. Now, admittedly, we could have started from a main button asset. So we could have started by going to Grid, right-click, going to UI, and then going to Button Text Mesh Pro, and started from there. And it's already halfway there. But I think doing this will also give you a good idea of how it all sort of works under the hood. because we're sort of creating the object by hand. So you get to see how a button actually works when it gets created. So with our panel selected, I'm going to add a button component to it. So click Add Component over on the inspector, and we're going to search for button. We don't want cooldown button, we just want button. So select button, and that's created a button component for us. And actually, it's been quite intelligent. It already knows what graphic it wants to talk to. So here it's got this target graphic called panel image, and that's what it would use to sort of interact with as the button. Here it says it does a color tint transition. So what that means is when you do stuff with the button, it will change the color of it as you interact with it. So as you can see, sort of the pressed color is slightly different to the normal color, which is slightly different to the highlighted color, which is slightly different to the disabled color. Now, I don't think in our case we want to have different colors. I think it just wants to be whatever color it is. So what I'm going to do is going to set all of these and make certain that they are all white. So there's no grey variants in there. They are all just white, including disabled as well. And that also means the alpha part of the disabled one also needs changing to full alpha. You could also have transition none as an option as well. If you don't want to do all of that, that is also an option you can do as well. And that hides that all away. Yep, that's entirely a option you can follow, QuizzyDad. So I think that's all we need to do for the time being now for our panel. Now we need to create our full grid. So let's just duplicate it many times, many times like that. And we now have 25 panels. What I'm actually going to do, I'm really rename all the panels, just so I don't have these numbers on the end. I don't like numbers on the end. They're just a bit meh in this case. If I wanted numbers on the end, then they would have the right numbers. So I'm going to select all of them, just out of habit. Select all of them, and then go over to the inspector and give them all the name of panel. So now they're all the same name. They are all panel. And I'm also going to just hit save, which actually, now this is a thing you will see happen every now and then, and it might scare you. Do not be afraid if this happens. TextMesh Pro sometimes has a quirk in it where when you save the scene or save various aspects of the scene, the text will just suddenly disappear. Don't worry, is all I'll say. If you are worried by it, then just hide and re-show one of the elements, and it should fix itself. Well, there you go. I've just reselected something, and they've just come back. So yeah, sometimes when you save the scene, TextMesh Pro text will just disappear for seemingly no reason. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. It does happen from time to time, but just reselecting a few things or turning things off and on will bring it back to life, and you don't need to worry about it because they will definitely be there at runtime. This did that to me on a test run from last time, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's a weird quirk. I don't know why it happens. I don't even know why they haven't even managed to patch it out yet, but it's worried me on a few occasions. Yeah, it's a thing that happens. So we're just going to hit save and save project to make certain everything is saved. And you're thinking, well, it's all well and good, but they're all the number 25. They're all the number 25, which is, well, a bit meh. Now, I could go in and manually change all these numbers, and, reasonably, that's not a bad idea. But do you want to know maybe a slight cheeky way of doing it automatically? QuizzyDan's going, yes, yes, yes. Show me. Okay. So, the slightly cheeky way will involve some code. It's not a shortcut, it is some code. It's not really a shortcut, but the thing is, if you do it this way, now with the code, you could theoretically change this game very easily to panel quiz attack, whatever number you want, and you don't have to edit it in any other way. So, we are going to create a new script for this. I mean, it's going to be good practice anyway ahead of time that we want to create a new script for the panel, because they're going to have some behavior to them. It's just very convenient that we're going to add an extra behavior to change the numbers for you. Panel quiz attack 169, absolutely, we could indeed do that. Hey, it doesn't even have to be square, it could just be any grid format. Square root of 1. Okay, so we're going to start creating a script for the panel. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start from... Do I want to teach you that or not? No, because that's probably a... Oh no, if you're coming from the world of PowerPoint, you probably understand it. If you're coming from the world of PowerPoint, I think you'll understand this. So I am going to do something else first, before we get there. Because you're thinking there's a lot of faff here with having to copy everything and do everything again. So I'm going to do something I didn't think I was going to do, but I've just realised if you've come from the world of PowerPoint, then you might understand this. So I'm going to start from one panel again. I mean, there is that. You could do list widths, but there's other things I want to do. Just thinking about now. So I don't know how many of you out there know much about like PowerPoint masters or like templating, things like that. But what we're about to do is sort of along those lines. We're going to sort of create a template for the panel, so that whenever we change one of them and then change the template master, then it applies that change to all of them. So what we're going to do first is a really weird thing, probably. I'm going to have this panel selected and I'm going to drag it into the assets window. Now I'm going to just move it to _game folder for the time being. So get yourself in the folder of assets _game just for now. And then with panel selected, we're going to drag it into here. We're going to drag something from the hierarchy into _game and then let go. Now a couple of things have just happened. We now have an asset called panel. And we also now have panel in here has gone blue. What the heck does all that mean? What we have just created is a prefab. We've just created a prefab called panel. So all of that information that we have just generated with this panel object, we have now constructed as an asset called panel. And is very useful. Prefabs are really very useful because you can edit a prefab and then any instance of that prefab somewhere in your scene will just take those changes automatically. So with that done, I think all I need to do now, I don't even need to look at the prefab itself at the moment because, I mean, it's not there at the moment. But we've prefabbed it. I think I might like Unity prefabs versus PowerPoint templates if they're going where you think. Well, we'll find out, Listwitz. So now we've generated prefab out of this. Now I can duplicate things, okay. So let's just duplicate them loads of times, like this. Now have 25 panels back again as they were, and I'm just going to rename them all to panel because I don't like the naming of them like that. So we now have panels, and they are all prefabs, so they're instances of this panel prefab. So let's just quickly demonstrate the prefab, how it works. I'm just going to change this number here from 25 to, I don't know, 1. We'll change it to number 1. And you can see it's changed just that one panel at the moment. However, if I want to apply that change to all of them, to all of the instances of that prefab, then with the panel selected, because that's where the panel asset is, you'll now see over here on the inspector we have some new options with this prefab row. And what we can do is go to overrides, and it'll tell us that we've done an override change in our scene to this Text Mesh Pro element. And I want to apply that to all of the instances. So if I want to do that, I click Apply All. And you'll see that every instance of that prefab with that element in it have now changed to the number of 1. So it's really useful for you to be able to design just one singular element, have lots of them, And then when you want to tweak a certain element inside of all of them, then you can just do that. So we'll quickly change that number back to 25 again, like that. Go back to the panel, select overrides, and click apply all. And we're back to where we were. Okay, now we're about to add the script. That's where we're about to go to. This is why I'm not a good educator, because I keep going on sidetracks. I should have a lesson plan, and I don't do lesson plans. Anyway, with the panel now configured as a prefab, we now go to start to create a script for it. So with the scripts folder open, I'm actually going to do it this way round. I'm going to go right click, create C# script. This is a different way round to how I did it before. The way I did it before was I had the object I wanted to have a component on selected. I clicked add component, added the name of the script, and then clicked new script. But you can also go into the assets, go to create and C# script, and then I want to create one with the name of. Now, we probably can't use the name panel because Unity has a no, yes we can, because Unity's panel isn't actually a class. So yes, we can use the term panel. So we're going to create a script called panel, and then with the panel element selected, or one of the panel elements selected in our scene, I then want to add a component, and I'm going to add that panel that we've just created, like that. And you'll see this blue line, and you'll see this sort of plus symbol on the icon for this component. Those are both there to indicate that these are currently added overrides to the original prefab. And I want to add those to the prefab. So we'll go to overrides, and you can see it's seeing that we added a new script to the prefab that we might want to add. I want to, so I'm going to apply it. So now all of those panels should now have that panel script on. As you can see, it does. All of those panels have that script on, which is very nice indeed. Okay, now we need to start tweaking this panel script so we can number them 1 through 25. Let's go into the panel script. Let's double click it. And that should bring it into our text editor of choice, or integrated development environment of choice. In this case, it is Visual Studio 2019. And it's generated a basic class for us with basic start and update method. Okay, that seems reasonable. So, how do you get the number of the panel? What you can do is you can talk to your parent and then ask it what your index is. And then with your index information, then you can basically get the number out of it. So first of all, we're going to get the text element that we need. So ask your parents, absolutely pop random comedy. We're going to ask our parents. So first of all, we need to have the text elements that we want to edit. So as before, if we want to talk to it outside of this class, we need to have them be public. So make it a public. We'll go tmp underscore text, and then we're going to call it number, and then end with a semicolon. Now you might see, because I was using Visual Studio, it automatically added a using up here. If you're not using Visual Studio and it's not that clever, then what you'll need is you will need to have a using statement at the top here called using TM Pro with a semicolon like that. Otherwise you can't use just that name. So make certain you have this line up here and you have this line as written like that. This doesn't have to be above Unity Engine. It can also be below Unity Engine, but it tends to always be at the top of the file somewhere. Okay. Now let's start talking to our parents. To do that, we need to first get to the transform. So everything in Unity, every game object, I'll preface that. Every game object in Unity has a transform to say where it is in the world. So we go transform. So that is our transform, our sort of position, rotation, location in the world. Then do dot, because we want to talk to the transform object in some way. And then we want to go to the parent. So we type in parent. So this will now be the transform of the parent node of this element. So that is the parent. Actually, you know what? Is there there's a better way to do this, isn't there? Oh yeah, they have a shortcut for you. There you go. There's a shortcut for you. Completely forgot they added that in. Yeah, get sibling index. I completely forgot they added that. So you don't even need to talk to your parents because they're going to do it automatically for you. So, sorry, we'll start this line again. So you start with transform, and then you go dot, because we want to talk to the transform, and then we want to go get sibling index. And what that tells you is what your index is as a sibling within that hierarchy. So that there is basically the number. You're nearly there. What we're going to do, though, is going to associate that to a variable here, just temporarily. So we know it's going to be an integer. As we saw, if we hover over here, it says here int, int. So we want to store it into an integer value, so int as a variable. And the name is going to be index, because that's what it is. It is an index rather than a number at the moment. I'm going to make it equal to that value, transform.getSiblingIndex, open close parentheses, because it is a method, but there is no parameters to it. And as always, we're finishing the line, so semicolon to finish the line. So that there is our index. Why do I say index? Because in most languages, I'm not going to say all because there are exceptions to the rule. In most languages, index starts at 0. So the first element in a thing, like an array or a collection, is at index 0. Second thing in a collection or array or such like is index 1, and so on and so on. There are other languages out there where they have indexing starting at 1, but most languages, with C# included, indexing starts at 0. So do remember, 0 is your first element. So, because we want to have our first element be known as number 1, we need to change our index to be a number. And I think what we can do, very simply, is actually, well, do we want this to be called index anymore? Because we could just do a simple addition to it. Let's rename that to number. Oh no, let's rename that to, I don't like number and number. I don't like this being called number and number. You know what? I'm going to rename that then. Like I said, like we said last week, naming variables is probably the hardest part of programming at times. I'm actually going to change this to say number text so that we know what we're talking about. That is actually the text for the number. So that's called number text now on line 8. And then there, we're going to say number equals transform.getSiblingIndex, and we're going to add 1 to it. So that takes our index and adds 1 to it to make it a number. Basically a panel number, yeah. And then to change our text to make it that number, then we go number text, which is the thing we want to edit or talk to, dot, because we want to talk to it, so we use dot. And then we go text, which is the thing we want to change on it. We make that equal to number, which is an integer, so it's not quite a string. We need to make it a string. So to do that, as we mentioned last week, everything has a convert to string method, and that is called dot to string, open and close parentheses, and we're done with the line, so semicolon, and that's the entire script. For the time being, we will talk more about this panel script, but for the time being, that will associate the number to the sibling index in our grid plus 1. So if we now go back into Unity, it will recompile things. Just like that. But we haven't associated the text element yet, so we need to do that. So on any of our panels, go down to the panel script and you'll see it's now got a number text property, and it's currently got none. We just want to associate that with our text, so open up the panel on the hierarchy and you see the number. That's what we want to associate it to, so drag from that into the number text field, and that's been added. As you can see, we've got the blue line appear again, and this has gone bold to indicate this is an override on the prefab. We do want to apply that change, so go up to the top, go to prefab overrides. It knows that there is a change on the panel script, and we're going to click apply all, and that is now associated that change to all the prefabs. Now, some of you might be thinking, has that associated this specific instance of number to all these panels, or has it associated its relative number for each panel? The answer is the latter. It does remember relations better than absolutions. So in this case, it's remembered this relationship as being a relative relationship within the prefab rather than an absolute relationship in the scene. So you'll see that every single one of these is associated to its appropriate child. So as we just keep going through some of these, open up the panel, click on the property, and you see it's associated correctly for each instance of the panel. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to hit save project just to be safe. But now, theoretically, if I were to hit the play button now, I would hope to see the numbers 1 through 25 appear. And they do! Just like that. Everyone, it's now 1 through 25. Annoyingly, I've not got a number text field yet. Oh, have you got a compile error, Quizzy If you go into the console tab in Unity, do you see any red messages? Do you see anything which has a red exclamation mark at the front of it? Because those will tend to stop Unity from compiling. And if you do, then try and copy paste some of the error or paste it into the Unity Workshop channel. Either or will work, and I'll be able to help you out. The type or namespace name, TP text. Watch the casing on text. That should be TP underscore capital T text. TP underscore capital T text. It should be what it needs to be. As you can see there, it needs to be a capital T for that to work. If that's a lowercase t, then it is the wrong name. The casing is sensitive. So do worry about that. If you are using a text editor, it should help you along. If you can see it coloured like this in Visual Studio, then it means that it has managed to match the class okay, and everything's good. However, if you name it incorrectly, you can see it's just white text in this case, and it's even giving us a red line here as well to say that it's completely wrong. So yes, casing is important. If it's not the punctuation that gets it, it's the capitalization, and if it's also not that, then it's the Americanization. So once you've done that, then hopefully when you come back into Unity, you should have no more errors appear after you've cleared the console out, and then you should see this appear. You have 1 through 25. Hey, brilliant. So everyone now should have a panel grid of 1 through 25. Yes, I already mentioned about that last week, Ben, about colour versus colour, just as a brief example. So yeah, now you have 1 through 25. And if you want to experiment with just a bigger grid, then by all means, just duplicate more panels, hit the play button and see what it does. And you'll see I now have a grid of 56 elements. So yeah, you can now mess around with the size of the panel that you want. If you want to play with a smaller grid, a bigger grid, whatever you want to do, and the numbers will just work in that order, which is it's nice and simple. Okay, we're nearly there. We're nearly there now with doing the basic implementation now. What we now need to do is we need to do a sort of conversation with the podiums and the panel now. So what you need to do is in the game you try and capture these panels and you turn them different colors, and you get your score is based on however many of the panels are your specific color. So we need to have something that sort of talks to everything at once. We need some sort of game overall elements so that the podiums could talk to the game could talk to the panels could talk to the game could talk to the podiums, that kind of thing. So everything could talk to each other. You can For those out there that know programming terms, you can obviously do this as a singleton in a way, using statics. But it's generally a disgusting pattern, but it is sometimes a necessary pattern. Is it global variables o'clock? Well, like I say, that's sort of the singles pattern is global variables o'clock. If you want to do it that way, then you can do that, if you're familiar with that. But it's a slightly disgusting thing, I would say. It's a slightly disgusting thing. It's not the best. It could be better. But what we actually only need is really one overall component over everything that can talk to stuff, and stuff can talk back. So what we're actually going to do is going to create a game component for everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this on the canvas, because we can just add these components to whatever we actually want. It doesn't have to be a special object. We can just add this to whatever we want. So I'm actually going to rename the canvas to game so that we're better describing what it's going to do. So that is the entire game inside. And then I'm going to add a script for that. So I'm going to go right click in the assets window, go to create C# script, and I'm going to call this game. So now we have thank you Visual Studio for doing that apparently. And we have a game component. And then I'm going to add that to my game object. I'm going to go add game. And now that has the game component on it. And now we need to start talking to things. So we have podiums and we have panels. So it's time to get into the world of arrays, everyone. The wonderful world of arrays or lists. So we now have this game component. Hello everyone in Kitten, welcome, and Pop Ramen Cody, yay! You keep asking for arrays at work. No, arrays. Not arrays, arrays. Oh, it's so difficult in English. Array Romano. Oh my god, I just got that. That's terrible. So yes, we're going to be talking about arrays now. So, first thing we need to do is get the game to know about everything that it needs to. So, first of all, it needs to know about the podiums. So, let's add a public field for all the podiums. So we go public, because everything needs to talk to it in some way, so make it public. Generally, it's always going to be public. We may introduce some privates later, but public is what you need for now. And then we're going to use our class, so we're going to bring in some podiums. So public podium, but we want to have a collection of them, an array of them. So I'm actually going to use this. I'm going to add in a square bracket, open and close. Now what this does is it indicates that this is an array type, and we want an array of the podium type. So this whole type name here is podium array. Then go space, and I'm going to give this variable, or this member, this field called podiums. Call it that. We're done with the line, and interesting, it's given me a suggested name of podia. So you can either go with podiums, or you can go pedantic and go podia. Entirely your decision, but apparently Visual Studio would prefer me to go with podia. I'm going to say, screw you, Visual Studio, I'm going with podiums. But I'm done with the line, end with a semicolon. We also, they're both valid, yeah. We also want to talk to all of the panels in some regard as well. So public panel, which is our class, and then open and close, and then panels. So we now have an array of panels as well. I'm going to hit save there just so we're done with that for the time being. We will come back to this in a moment, but let's start associating some things to game. So the game is here, and we have podiums and we have panels. And what I can do is I can go into podiums and start dragging some podiums into this array like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I can start to do the same with panels. So I can do this, I can do this, and do this, and you do this, and you can see it's starting to get tedious already that I'm starting to move these one at a time. I can move more than one at a time. You can do that. It's a bit harder to do, but here is a nice little nifty shortcut for you. So with this object selected with the hierarchy, this game object, the first thing you want to do is hit the padlock option up here in the top right corner. What this does, it will lock this inspector to this game object. So whatever now we have selected over on the left, it doesn't change what is in this inspector. Then what I can do now that I'm free to select whatever I want is do left click panel and then left shift click the bottom panel. So now I have all of the panels selected in one go. I can then drag this entire selection over to this panel elements, panel array, drop it onto the panel's text, and bang, they are now all in that panel's array. Nice and simple. Do remember that if you are using the padlock, to remember to unlock it once you're finished, otherwise you will forget. How do I add the game script to the inspector? I can only see game menu or game pad as an option. So did you create the game script first, Quizzy Dan? I did that by going in the scripts folder. I right-clicked, clicked create, clicked C# script, and then named it game. And then you have the script, and then on the game object, I then went into here, I clicked add component, and I typed game, like that, and it did appear. Does this not appear in your search? If you do the search for the term game in here, does game not appear in your search? Doesn't appear in your search. Okay, open up the game script then, and the first thing to look at is it called that? Is it called game with a capital G? If it's not called the same, then it won't work. And then after that, you'll need to look at sodding game. Yes, that's the other problem with Unity, with its components, is that this name has to be exactly the same, again, type sensitive, to the name of the file. So, name of the file has to be named the same as this class. Once that is sorted and it's recompiled, then you should be able to see it okay. And presuming you have those two fields there as well, then you should start to be able to add some things. Let me know if that's all good, Quizzy Dan, and we can move on. Excuse me. Yep, we're cooking. Brilliant. All right. Okay. So we now have some associations here from the game to the podiums and to the panels. The next thing we want to do is each podium needs to have a colour. Well, you can see that we've already sort of half done that with the different images. That was sort of done in a sort of cheeky way. But to send the colours up to the panel, then we need to actually have that colour information defined somewhere on the podiums. So we're going to go back to the podium script. I'm going to add a colour, some colour to that. So the first thing we're going to do is actually we can start to remove some of this code we're not going to use anymore as we're starting to get more toward panel quiz attacks. So for now, I think we're going to delete this key code score add keyline, and we're going to delete this if condition here. So we're going to delete this input get key down and just leave this update to be just this one line of score text.text. And do I want to have an add points method? No, nothing is going to be using that anymore. That was what the button example was there for. So we're not going to need that anymore. So we're going to delete that as well. So the podium script should now look more like this currently. So we have just these 6 members at the top. Start with just a couple of lines in and update with just the one line in. But we are going to add some stuff to this now. Next thing we're going to add is a color. And as we were also talking about just very briefly earlier, is the spelling of color. So we're going to add another public member. So public once again. And this time it's a color. So COLOR. Yes, COLOR. Even though this is a Unity project and we have mono behavior with a U, color is without a U. So remember, color without a U in Unity. Use a public color space, and we're going to call this we'll call this player color because everything else is player here at the moment. And I'm going to keep the same naming schema here, so I'm going to continue to use a not U in the name of the variable, just so it's consistent with the type name. I know sometimes I deviate from that, but it's an irritation that there is a mixed match of with U and without U in different type names. It's the wrong spellong and not the other wrong spellong. Yep, I know. So we have a new variable called public color player color, and I don't think Podium needs to worry about that at the moment because we already have the image sprite, the sprite that already has that color baked in. So I don't think we need to worry about any more unless we wanted to have some really funky recoloring on the podiums, which technically you could. We could actually use the white podium as the basis and then tweak the colors of all the others, but I think I like the style for the time being, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Now on each of the podiums, we now have the new color field, and let's populate that. Now, you could go into the color wheel, you could go into this and go pick a number and put some alpha onto it, or it does actually have a color picker option over on the right here. So if you click the color picker and then hover over where you want to pick and then click, it selects that color for you. So we've just selected the same blue that is in this podium image. Just nice and simple for you. Let's quickly do that for the other podiums. So podium green, we're going to give it the green color there. Now, do watch out here that even though it is picking the right color for you, it's not picking the right alpha value. You can see a preview of the alpha at the bottom line of that field. You can see it's green and it has a black underline at the moment. The black there is the alpha value, and it tells you that it's an alpha of 0. As you add more alpha, you can see a white bar fill up as more alpha is added. So do make certain that when you see the color field that you have a white underline at the bottom if you want it to be fully opaque. So keep adding some more fields to it, add some more values. So we pick this one as white with full alpha, or nearly white. It's a slightly off white. And then podium red, I'm going to pick red and fill the alpha up. Now, I just realized this is a white podium and we've already got white squares. That's not right. We need to change that, don't we? I believe these need to be grey squares. So let me change the panel color because these need to be grey by default. So let's change the color from white to grey to say that it's it's an unoccupied cell at the moment. And again, you'll see it's an override. It's gone blue. It's gone slightly bold to say it's an override of the prefab value. We want to apply that. So go to the top, go to prefab overrides and click apply all to apply that change to the prefab and hence all of the instances of it. So now they are all grey. Beautiful. That's better. Okay, so all the podiums now have their respective color in their podium script. And that's all good. Overrides are very good. Now, if you're feeling really, really daring, prefabs can be nested. You can have prefabs inside of prefabs. If you're feeling very daring. That feature was only added as of Unity 2018. So it's a relatively recent addition to Unity. There are still some weird oddities to it, but it is certainly a thing available to you if you are feeling very brave. There's also prefab variants. That's another thing you can go and investigate at your own leisure if you want to. We're just going to deal with just single level prefabs and be done with it. You can't have a prefab inside of itself or along those lines. They have to be different prefab objects. You can't do prefabception, otherwise you'll get a Stack Overflow and then everything will stop. But you certainly have a prefab inside of another prefab, and you can keep doing that to as many levels as you want. But we're going to deal with just single level prefabs for the time being. So podiums have a color. Panels, we can change the color theoretically. Actually, no, we can't change the color yet, so we need to add something to the panel script to do so. So to the panel script, we need to add a image to it so that we can edit it. That actually means we need to add in another using statement because we're talking to specifically a UI element. So we go to using at the top here. We type in Unity Engine, if I can type, dot UI. Not UI elements, that's a different thing entirely. You just want dot UI, end the line with semicolon, and then back to where we were. Below the number text line, we want to go public image, public image, and we're going to call this the sort of the background color, isn't it? The background image. So I'm going to call it background. So we have the number text and we have the background. Okay. So let's quickly associate that. So go back to Unity, select one of the panels, and we need to associate this background image to itself, actually, because it is the one that has the image. So we just drag itself into background. It's known that it's got an image. It's got a change because it's got the blue line on the prefab. So we want to apply that change to all of them. We hit apply all. Now all of them have that same change. So now all of them have a reference to that background image. Okay. We are sort of there, I would say. So what we can do now is we can start to do some interactions. Or can we? No. Podiums do not have selection options yet at the moment. So we need to have something to be able to select. For that, a podium, we need to add a button to then. We did have a button earlier, but there was a separate element. So it's just like we did to the panel element. We need to add a button to each of these so that we can click on them to do a thing. So, very quickly, let's go to Podium Blue, select that, go to Add Component on the right. I'm going to add a button. And again, it's clever enough to realize that it's talking to the Podium Blue image. I'm going to turn the transition off. We don't need the transition at the moment. You seem to have lost the prefabness of my panels at some point. Oh, have you now? What situation have you got? Have you got any unapplied changes on any of them? I mean, if that is a problem, Matt, then find one that you're happy with. Make certain it has all of its applied changes with overrides. Then just delete the other ones and then re-instance them and re-duplicate them. If that is a problem, if you've managed to find a way where you've messed up somewhere. At least that's a simple fix in this situation because it's a nice simple grid and they're all exactly the same. So you can find one that you're most happy with, make certain that you have applied all the changes that you need to with the overrides option, delete the others you're not happy with, then reduplicate that one panel that you are happy with, and then you should be back to where you were. It's a bit of a faff, but at least it's not losing all of the work, and also you're not having to edit every single one of them manually all the time. So we were going to Podium Blue, we're adding a button, which we do. We also want to do that to the others. We can actually add a component to multiple elements at the same time. So with green, white, and red selected, I'm going to add a component and go button. And now each of the other remaining podiums also now have a button and they have their associated options. And we're going to turn their transition to none so that they don't have any special transitions. So now all of those are buttons. So now we can click on a podium, we can click on a panel. That's all well and good, but that doesn't really do us much at the moment, does it? Just selecting one of those things. We can click on a thing and we can click on another thing, but it's not going to do much. Let's just quickly go into play mode just to quickly demonstrate that. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. We haven't defined any behavior yet. So let's define some behavior for that. For that, we now need to go back to the game. So go back to the game script by going into the assets, go to game script, double clicking on game, and we return back to the game component. So what we need to do is we need to get at the buttons of the podiums And then for doing that, we need to basically select what the current podium is. You know, some sort of like who has buzzed in, who has control of the game. Then once we've done that, we then need to listen for when a panel is clicked. And once we've done that, then we can say recolor the panel with that podium color. That's sort of the logic we're going for at the moment. So first of all, you would click on the podium that has control. Then you click on the panels to change the colors of the panels, the appropriate color. That's going to be the simple way to start with at the moment. So with that, I don't think game needs an update method at the moment. So for now, let's delete the update method because it's going to get in the way. So select all of this and delete it. Be careful not to delete the last brace though, because this is necessary to say that this is the end of this class. So make certain you still have this brace at the end. Otherwise, things will go wrong and you'll have red lines everywhere, as you may see when I do it by example. There you have a red line there to say you haven't closed the class. So leave that there as it was. And what we're going to do is, well, we need to go through all of the podiums. And they're in an array. So there are a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to do one way, which is nice and simple. I know that there are better ways out there, but I'm going to do a nice simple way for the time being. It's not elegant, but at least it indicates a simple way of how to work with it, and also you don't have to worry about extra issues. You're in game mode. Ah, yes. So if you're in game mode or play mode, or if you're on the game tab like this, then yeah, or if you're in play mode, if you've got it playing, then yes, you're going to have some problems. Make certain that you are not in play mode, and also make certain you are on the scene tab if you want to be editing stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot of faff sometimes if you've gone into play mode and start tweaking things, because Unity allows you to tweak things at runtime. And then when you get out of play mode, you suddenly find that you don't have any changes saved. Yeah, be careful about that. Always be certain to be out of play mode. I think, is there an option these days? There was certainly an option before where you could change the color of the editor based on the mode. And what a lot of people like to do, yeah, here we go, play mode tint. What a lot of people like to do is change the color of play mode so it's really obvious. So let me just show you how you get to that again. If you go to edit, you go to preferences, and you see this preferences section. If you go to the colors section on the left, you'll then see this option over on the right called play mode tint. And that is the tint color that is used on the entire editor to show that you're in play mode. Now, if you want to make it really obvious that you're in play mode, then maybe change it to red or some other really contrasting color to the normal gray. If you close that off and then go into play mode, you'll see that everything gets tinted by that color to make it really obvious that you are now in play mode. So do use that if that helps you out. As you see now, everything is in a very dark red, which is very easy to notice. I, for one, don't like it to be as strong as that, but the play mode tint it was using was not much, so I'm going to bring the tint down slightly at the very least, like that. So, yes, you can use red, or you can use blue or yellow, or anything that works for you. Now, trying to figure out the last thing I actually did that had an effect. The grayed out panels. Grayed out panels? Yeah, okay. Okay, so yes, we're going to do some looping. We're going to do some looping over these arrays, because an array is a collection of elements. It's a simple collection in that everything is just in a flat list, and they're indexed from 0 through to however many that are in the array. An array can't be resized under normal rules. Obviously, you can edit as many as you want in the Unity editor, in the sort of the option here. This can be resized at runtime, but strictly speaking, in the world of C#, an array isn't resizable. You can resize them, but again, hand waving, technically they're not resizable. So we're going to go through each one of them, and get at their buttons. So let's go through the podiums first. So I'm going to do a for loop. Here is a for loop, the start of which. So we're going to loop through all the podiums to start with. We're going to go for, then open parentheses. I'm going to go int podium index. So we're declaring a local variable in this for loop that we're going to be calling podium index. And we're going to start that at 0. So we're going to start out at index 0. Semicolon. Now, seems strange that we're using a semicolon, but we're not at the end of the line. This is a bit of a special case for loop statements. The statements inside the parentheses, there's actually 3 statements, and you need to declare them separately. And the way they use, the way to separate the declarations is to use a semicolon, because that seems like the standard way for everything else. So you're going to have a semicolon in here to say that we're done with declaring the variable. Arrays act like lists but are not lists, which are a different thing. Yes. Arrays are of the type list but are not a list themselves. It's a bit weird. We can talk about that later maybe. Okay. Next thing is the condition for which the loop can continue to run. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that we can continue running this loop for as many times as we want, so long as podium index is less than the value of podiums.length. So what this is saying is this for loop will continue to run over and over and over again, so long as this value podium index is less than the length of the podiums array. So you can get, it's a nice simple property to get at the length of any array. You just go the name of the array dot length with a capital L, end of the condition statement. And then the last part we need to talk about for the for loop is what happens on the next iteration. So this is the code that gets executed for the next iteration on. And what we want to do is just increment the podium index values. So we go from index 0, then index 1, then index 2, and keep going until we run out of podiums to go through. So we go podium index, and we're going to use plus equals 1 because it's nice and obvious what that does from before. So we go podium index and we assign it the value of podium index but incremented by 1 value. You can also do podium index plus plus or plus plus podium index, or podium index equals podium index plus 1. Any of those will work the same way in this case. Can you put that on 3 lines within the text editor? So yes, you can indeed do this section in 3 lines. So you can format it like that, and that is still the same. You'll see there's some red lines here, but that's because we haven't actually declared the loop section yet. It's missing something. But theoretically, yes, you can declare this in 3 lines. There's no restriction on that in any way. So if you feel like the line is quite long, in this case, this is actually over 80 characters, which in sort of the old world, 80 characters are sort of like your theoretical limit. It wasn't actually a limit, it's just one of those preferred limits that you don't go beyond for a length of line, so you could collapse the lines down. But that's entirely your decision. You can actually break at various points on the line, but yeah, you can do that. As I say, it's missing a section of the loop. That's why the red lines are here. So let's add in that section. So we need to add in some braces, some squiggly brackets. And that tells us where the loop begins and where the loop ends. So that is the start of the for loop. Doesn't actually do anything. All it actually does is just increments podium index for as many podiums as there are, and that's it. Doesn't do much. Now we need to actually do something else. Why not podium index plus plus? I mean, I prefer to do podium index plus plus, but I'm just doing it like this to make it easier for the reader to understand what it means. It's entirely, it can be a personal preference, but I'm just changing it so that it's more obvious that that is actually what it's doing, is incrementing that value by 1. If you did plus plus, it'd be like, well, what the heck, for new people, what does plus plus mean? Then I have to explain that, but we've sort of previously explained that anyway. So I'm just leaving that as that for the time being. Okay, now we need to get at each podium and then do something with its button so that we can do a thing on the button press. So, next line is going to be podiums. So that's the name of our array. And now if we want to access the elements of that array, then we open up a square bracket. And then inside of that, we want the index. So podium index. So what this is going to now, this block here will actually return out the element that is at this index in this array. So it will return the podium that is defined at podium index 0, for example, in the podiums array. But as we increment podium index, this will be different podiums for each iteration of the loop. And then for each podium, we need to get its button. Well, we're talking about podium here, and if we look at the podium script, we didn't actually add a button field here. But that's fine. Anything that is a component inside of Unity, so buttons, images, even our components here, game, panel, and podium, you can get at them a different way. You can get at them in a slightly cheekier way. And you could do dot, because we're talking to the podium. And we're going to go get component. So we want to get a component from them. And we could do it this really disgusting way of giving a named type, but that's a really ancient way of doing it. What we want to do instead is do dot component and then use an angle bracket, or less than symbol. It's technically an angle bracket. And then give the type here. So we want to get component of type button. And you'll see it's suggesting this script here, button of Unity Engine.ui. Now we are missing this reference, so I'm going to add that at the top here using Unity Engine.ui, because we're talking about a UI element, so we need to do that. Again, I say UI element, but not UI elements. Element, very different things. So make certain you have using Unity Engine.ui at the top with the semicolon. And now button is resolved. It's now gone a sort of aquamarine color. And because it's a method, we do need to open and close parentheses, and that will get us our button. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to assign that to a local variable here just to make it a little easier to read. So at the beginning of that line, we're going to go button, because that's the type we want to store. And we're going to call this the podium button. And we're going to equal that to all of this. So get the podium from the podiums array at podium index, whatever it is in this loop, dot, we're talking to that podium. Get component, we want to get a component that is also on that podium, and we want to get component of type button. End the line with the semicolon. So this here will now be the button component. So we look at the podium, it'll now be, for example, this component of this podium. Just set up a reference to it. So what it is that we're talking to these components, this component here called podium. However, this also does know, just through Unity, this also knows about this. It also knows about this. It also knows about this. That they can all just be gotten at by using the get component. So it's a shortcut to having to do a reference. So here we've got, it already has a reference to various things. Player image. This player image isn't on the same object, so get component in this case would not be able to get at that image. However, it could get at this image, and it could get at this button image. So it's just a shortcut for getting from here to anything else on the same object. So you don't have to add in references to everything. References are nice in places, but sometimes it does get a bit cumbersome. So I'm just giving you here an example of how you can get around adding another reference, so that you can just get at a component that belongs on the same object. Am I going to integrate my Buzzin.live code into this? I don't know, Egg, because Dev is currently doing his own sort of flavor of Buzzin.live, which he says he also wants to do an API version of. So I'll be able to do an API, a properly supported API version of his Buzzin. which can then work with Unity. So that probably be more what I'll end up doing. Anyway, we now have this podium button. We want to do something when you click on the button. So let's type in podium button because we're talking to this button. Dot, we want to talk to it. And it suggested the correct thing. We want to do something with the on-click event. So go dot on click. This time, be careful, this is a lowercase o. Now we've seen in other cases where member variables are involved, it started with an uppercase. For this one, for the on click, it's a lowercase o that you need. So be careful about that. And then dot again, because we're talking to the event. And then we want to add a listener to the event. So we want to add something that will be called, as in they are listening for a click to happen. So go add listener, open parentheses, and it's going to ask for a Unity action. Now, you could do this in a couple of ways. You could do this in a very functional way. What I'm going to do is... what am I going to do? This is going to be an interesting way to do it, actually. Should I do it in a functional way? No, because that's too high, too complex. Just trying to think of a way of doing it where you just use the podium index instead. Hello, Whiskers. What? What? Not Whiskers. Meow. What? 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 You're gonna get fed later. You're gonna get fed later. What's going to be the best way to do this where it maintains that? So it uses Unity action, which is not the same thing. What is the best way to do this where it's not ridiculously complicated? Yes, what, Whiskers? What? What? He just jumped up on the desk, dang it. Let me get a sip of water. I've just realised I've sort of gone into a pattern where I know what I want to do. But that's not necessarily the right way to do it for beginners. Because I'm going to be teaching you things that are really stupid. Well, not stupid, really complicated, technically. Or I just have to tell you to just do it and just go along with what I say, and you don't know what I mean. Whiskers, no, not for the treats. No, go for the treats. Don't go for the treats. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We can have a quick break while I think about what I want to do here. Sorry about this. This is why I really should do a lesson plan so that I don't get into these problems. What's the right way to do this in a simple way? Okay, cool, because you're done. All right, thank you very much, and we'll catch you later. I should have probably done it the other way round. Oh, I should have done it that way round. That would have been better. Because podiums, there's only 4 of them. Yeah, there's only 4 of the podiums. It's probably the better way to do it. Well, she demands food as well. You know what? I'm going to have a quick break then. I'll just quickly go and feed Whiskers. So I'll be back in a moment. Catch you shortly. Go. Go. Right, I'm back. Yeah, I'm over-engineering the problem here. This is probably going to work okay for the panels, but it won't work for the podiums in the same way. Not in an easy way, anyway. So, sorry about that. We're going to delete that for now. I'm going to do this a different way. Yeah. Now I'm second guessing the other way around as well. The other way around is still kind of disgusting. Write up your own entire interrupt reader to get the messages from the mouse driver. Oh yeah, let's go down to absolute basics. I'm just going to quickly... What are the restrictions on a Unity action? So I'm thinking very literally on it. Can you do something special with them? Zero argument delegate. Yeah, no. Yeah, you can't do what I want to do with that. What's the restrictions on the events for button on click for Unity? What are the restrictions on that? Because I know there's not many things you can do. Button on click parameters. Can you refer to a thing? I'm just curious. Because I know you can give it an index. I'm just concerned, can you give it a thing? Can give it a thing. Yeah, that's what I wanted to avoid doing, is that kind of stuff, because it just looks disgusting to a new person. And that's JavaScript, so that's not going to be it. So you can't just do... I'm just going to quickly type something in. You know what? We'll do it the other way. We'll do it the side way. Okay, it'll be fine. Okay. Right. So what we want to do is we want to add a method to the game to select a podium, as I mentioned before. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing it the for loop way of setting it with the buttons, we're going to do it a different way, where we actually set up the button information manually in the Unity editor. So to do that, we will need a method here to accept it. So this is basically going to be like what we did with the button to add 10 points to the podium from the previous stream. So we want to create a public void. Public because we want to talk to it from everywhere else. Void because it doesn't have any return. And we're going to go select podium. And then what we want to do is select podium with an index. So it would be int podium index. And then what we want to do is we need to actually have memory of which podium we actually have selected. So this is the first time we're actually going to be using a private here, because nothing else needs to know about this. Only the game really needs to know about what podium is currently selected. So we're going to declare a private, so it's private to the game and not public. And we're going to say a private podium, so something will be selected as a podium. And I am going to call this podium, no, selected podium, should I say, sorry, selected podium. But I'm going to start it with a lowercase letter rather than an uppercase. So that's just sort of a way of that you could use to differentiate between a public member and a not public member, a private member in this case. So you can do that. You can also do an underscore at the front if you prefer to do that kind of thing, or M underscore, or whatever your coding style dictates for private versus public. This is what I've got here. I'm going to do with a lowercase s at the front. And then in select podium, what we want to do is set selected podium to be whatever podium we pass in via the index. So selected podium, that equals, we're going to equate that to something, and that will then be podiums, the name of the array which has all the podiums in, and then open a square bracket because we're indexing into it, and we're going to find a podium with it, and then podium index is the variable which has the index that we want. So this will then set it to that podium at the podium index inside of the podiums array, and we're done the line, so semicolon. So we don't particularly care about anything fancy in the naming because Unity itself won't know or care about exposing it. Absolutely, Matt. There's some caveats. Well, again, there's some caveats, but in the main case, yeah, you do not need to. Unity doesn't care about the names of those. Anything that's private, it basically ignores by default. So you can give it whatever name you feel is comfortable for you. So you can even go stupid naming scheme like that or whatever, if you have some naming scheme that works for you. But we're going to go with underscore a lowercase s on selected podium and use that. So that's the selected podium up. And let me quickly associate the buttons on the podiums to do the right thing. So on each podium, we want to add in a event call on the onClick event to that game component, onto that method called select podium. So we need to go to podium blue, onClick, and we want to add an event call. We want to then drag the game object into the target. Currently says none object. We want to drag game into that target, and then click the drop down for no function, go down to game, and then click on select podium, which has an int parameter, and we want to say that we want to start and select podium at index 0, which is this podium here. Let's just quickly populate the other events for the different podiums as well. So for podium green, drop in the game into the target, drop down function to game, select podium, and this one is index 1. Next one, podium white, add an event, drop in the game, go to function, game, select podium, and we fill in index 2. And then podium red, create an event, drop in the game, select the function, select podium, and this one is index 3. So if we click on one of these buttons, it will tell the game that I have selected the panel at this index, and then it will set this value of selected podium to be that index. That's pretty cool. So now to recolor the panels based off of the current selected podium. Now we can go back to the start and we can go and do that loop the way we were going to do it initially, but for the panels. So I'm going to start a new for loop in the game component in the script for it. So for open parentheses, int, this time we're going to talk to panels, so panel index equals 0, starting at index 0, semicolon, that's the end of that declaration. Next, the next declaration section is the condition for where the loop continues, so we want to say keep looping so long as panel index is less than panels.length. So as long as the index that we have is still less than the length of the panels array, then we can continue going. End that declaration with a semicolon. And then the last one is the incrementer of the for loop. We say panel index plus equals 1 to say add 1 to the panel index for each loop. And then we need to add some opening and closing braces to say this is the actual for loop. and we're back to where we were. Now, let's do what we were going to do with panels, but on podiums, but now with panels. So panels, open square bracket, panel index. So we're going to, ooh, typo. So we're going to get the panel at the panel index in the panels array. And then we're going to get the component. Again, we're going to get the button component from that. So angle bracket, open button, close angle bracket, open and close parentheses, because get component is a method. It's a function, so you need to give it some parameters, but there are no parameters for it. So just open and close parentheses. And we will associate that to a local variable here. So button, panel button equals all of that. And I end the line with a semicolon. So we've got the panel button. On new line, then we want to do something with its on click. So panel button dot on click is the event we want to talk to. Dot add listener. And then what we want to do is... this has the same problem. I've just realised this has the same freaking problem to it. Dang it! It's the same problem. Why did I freaking do this? Ignore what I've just done. Oh, God. What am I doing? Can I do this? Can I do this? Public void select panel. Is that a thing I can do? I'm just curious. Can I do that on a button? I'm just an idiot at the moment. Sorry. This is why I'm not an educator. This is why I'm not an educator. So I can't do this game. Select panel. Oh, you can. You can do that. I completely forgot you could do that. Well, there you go. From the top, everyone. From the top, everyone. So yeah, this is programming in a nutshell, everyone. Everything you do, you're going to do over and over and over again because you keep finding better ways to do it. So you can do this. Okay, well. I may also want to change this as well, so that it's like it feels better to me. I'm going to change this as well, so it's not based off of an index, because it's disgusting as an index. Okay, so we're going to delete those. I'm going to start again. We're going to start again, and I'm hopefully going to be able to find an edit point when I edit the VOD, so that I can just say we're going to start from here, and you'll never see any of those mistakes. So, we want to add in two methods, one for when a podium is selected and one for when a panel is selected. So, let's create two public methods for doing those. So, public void select podium, and the parameter into this is going to be the podium that we selected. So, we're going to do that. We're going to say public void select podium, open parentheses to declare the parameters that we want, and we just want one parameter which is called podium with the variable with the type podium. Add in some braces so that we have a body to this method, and we want to specify that the selected podium member variable, the private member variable that we had earlier, is equal to that podium. Yep, you're going to be hearing podium in your sleep now. Thank you very much. Second method we want to do then is when we select a panel. So public void select panel, and this time we are passing in a panel as its parameter. So select panel, open parentheses, panel as the type name, panel as the variable name, open and close some braces so we have the body. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to do the association right here. So we're going to change the color of the panel based off of what we have as the current podium. So let's do panel dot background. So we're talking to the panel and we're going to the background image, and then we're going to change the color of that background image like this. So panel dot background dot color, and we're going to equal that to whatever our selected podium currently is. So selected podium dot, and we're going to set that to the player color, which we defined earlier on the podium. Hello, Whiskers. What are you doing? You just had some food. Are you okay? You're all over the shop now. What's that? What are you all about? Do you just want some company? Is that all it is? Okay. Okay. Just relax there on my lap while I try and continue coding. Okay. And that's the end of that line. So we're going to end that with a semicolon. And we're going to hit save there. And we're going to go into Unity. I'm going to fix those those event calls first. So on podium blue, it's going to say we don't know what that is anymore. So let's reassociate that to game, select podium, and we're just going to drop itself on to it like that. There you go. Then do that for all the other podiums. So just fix up these event calls to select podium and drag in itself. Podium white, select game, select podium, drag in the podium as the parameter, and red, game, select podium, drag in the podium. Those are now fixed up. And the other thing we need to do now is make the panels do something on their button click. So on the panel object, go to on click, click add to add an event call, drop in the game, and then go to function, game, and we want to select a panel, and we want to drop in itself. And it's an override, so we want to apply that change. So let's go to the top here, go to overrides, click apply all. Well, now this is the limitations of prefabs. Because this here is a reference to something outside of the prefab, it can't be part of the prefab, unfortunately. So there's still this element here that isn't part of the prefab, but is still associated in some way. So, unfortunately, if we then go to any of these other panels, although it knows that it's added a new event call, it can't resolve everything, unfortunately. So, because of that, in this one case, we will have to recreate these panels. But luckily, because they're all exactly the same and you can just do them via a duplicate, it is a simple fix of selecting all the other panels that we haven't edited so far, deleting them, and then reduplicating the one panel that we have actually configured correctly. So it's a bit of a faff, I know, but is the only way to get this event call to work outside of the prefab, because it is referring to something that isn't in the prefab. So all I did is edited one of them, overridden as much as I could, so applied as many changes as I could to the appropriate prefab, then deleted the others, and then recreated them by duplicating the one that I am happy with. So a bit of a faff, but luckily in this case simple to fix because they are all the same and they're all getting laid out for us by the grid component for free. So I'm going to hit save and hit save project, and I think the buttons might actually do something here. So let us go to hit the play button. Cool. And then let's go and click on Mrs. Yakka. So we've clicked on the Mrs. Yakka podium. Nothing's changed yet. Maybe you want to do something to indicate that. We can maybe do an animation later to say you have selected the podium. And then let's try clicking on a panel. And look at that. It's changed the color of the podium to that green color of the selected podium. And we just do that on all of them as we want. And then if you want to change to a different podium, then we can click on a different podium. And then suddenly now that is the podium in control. If we want to go back to blue, click on the blue podium. And we've got all that. And click on Whiskers, and Whiskers has got control. And there you go. Nice simple way of giving a podium some control and then changing the colour of the cells to different colours. Yes and no, Egg, because technically it goes to open control, so you could actually do that as just a grey cell, just to indicate that it's back to open control. But either way, it doesn't matter because we're just changing the colour to a specified colour in the podium, so it would just be a different way of doing that. So that's how to change the colours. Now, how do you change the scores? Because, well, as it currently stands, green technically should have 3, blue should have 6, red should have 4, and white should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because that's the number of cells each of them has. It's now just a inner border. What do you mean it's now just an inner border pop ramen comedy? What do you mean by that? I don't know what you mean by that. Oh, the attack chunks thing. Ah, right, they've changed it there. Okay, fine. So that's a different stylistic decision then. But we're not concerned about that at the moment. So yeah, how do you change the colours for each of the podiums, or change the scores, should I say, for each of the podiums? Could we briefly get panel.cs on screen? Absolutely, we can. So panel.cs is currently defined as that. So we have 2 values here. We have number text and we have background defined as the 2 public fields. Background is what we need to change the colour of the background. Number text is there so that we can automatically populate the number of each panel based off of its sibling index in its parent. So that's all we should have in panel, is that. We don't even have anything in update at the moment, but that's fine. Thank you, Whiskers. Hopefully that should be all good for you now. And so yeah, that's where we're at the moment. So we need to now count. Now need to count in some way the number of panels that are illuminated for each podium. Okay, so what we can do is do something like the following. So I'm going to take it back out of play mode, so make certain you are out of play mode now. Otherwise, things will go wrong. Especially if you do code changes while you're still in play mode, things can go really wrong sometimes. So make certain you're out of play mode if you've just been testing it. And we're going to go back into the game. So, if you know what the code changes don't say. No, code changes do save, but because it needs to recompile, it technically has to reset every component. And in doing that, you then can run into a bad time if it resets everything and you don't handle that situation. We're currently not handling that situation anyway because of reasons. But yeah, so if you do a code change while you're at runtime, then things can go wrong. That's the thing to take away from that. So what we want to do is, I think the simplest way, maybe not the most performant way of doing it, but the simplest way to manage the score is every time we select a panel, we just recalculate all the scores, because we have access to all of the podiums here in an array and we have access to all the panels here in an array. So what we can do is we can just reset the scores on all the podiums and then go through each panel, check what their color is, check what the color of the podium is, and if they match, then we add 1 point, and we just do like that. I think that's a simple, understandable way of doing it. Say, not the most performant, but certainly easy to understand. So, in the select panel method, we're going to change the background color of the panel that we've just selected. Then after that, what we want to do is we want to reset the scores of all of the podiums. So we're going to actually finally use a for loop. So for int, podium index is 0. Podium index is less than podiums dot length plus plus podium index. So that there is a for loop, starts at podium index 0 And we keep going so long as podium index is less than the length of the podium array. And for each time we add 1 to the podium index. I suppose I should do that for consistency with what before. I just got into my habit there of using plus podium index. But either of them will work. Then what we would want to do is go to podiums and then index that. So with the square bracket open, podium index, close the square bracket. So we're getting the podium at podium index in the array called podiums. And on that we want to change their score. So go to player score, which we defined in the last stream. There we go, equals, and we want to set that to 0. Close the line, end the line on a semicolon. So what this for loop does, it goes through every single podium that we have defined up here, and it goes and sets their score to 0. You're like, well, that's only half of the job done. We now need to add scores based on however many panels are their color. So now we need to loop through all of the panels. So we go for int panel index is 0. So outside of this for loop, we're starting a new loop, starting with panel index is 0. Panel index is less than panels.length. So make certain you've got the difference there between podiums and panels, because if you use the wrong length, then you will probably run into a out of bounds exception when you run the game. So make certain you are accessing the correct array. And then you do panel index plus equals 1. Then we define the body for that for loop. Now we want to get the color of the panel in each case. So color, again, spelt without the U. Panel color is the name of the variable I want to define. Whiskers is having a moment. Clearly, she is just, I don't know what was in that food, but she's certainly on something. Panel color equals panels at panel index. So we're getting the color of the panel at panel index. Well, not quite yet. We've got the panel at panel index. Dot background. So the background image. And we're getting the color of that. So this will associate to panel color the color of the image of the panel at panel index inside of the array panels. That's what all of that line means. And as always, semicolon at the end of the line. And we're going to have a... Ooh, hello, what happened there? We got rid of a brace, sorry. Then inside of that, we need another loop. We need to now loop over the podiums while looping over the panels. So we're going to have a nested loop here. So inside of his, we're going to have another for loop. For int podium index is 0. You okay, Whiskers? No, she's really having a moment. Podium index is 0. Podium index smaller than podiums.length. Podium index plus equals 1. So again, starting a for loop, podium index is 0. So long as we are still less than podiums.length in this case, then keep increasing podium index. Open and close parentheses, or indeed you could Control C and Control V here and then delete the middle line. You can also do that. I tend not to promote copy and paste code though, for reasons, because copy paste code is a code smell and code smells are generally bad. I say generally, again, there's an asterisk, there's always a caveat to that situation. There is another reason why I'm doing it sort of this way, because you can do it a different way. Okay, so now we need to do a comparison. So to do a comparison, we use the if, as we explained before when we did the keyboard shortcut. So we're doing a if comparison to check if the color is correct. So if, open parentheses, and the condition we're checking for is if the panel color, so the color of the panel that we've just gotten, is equal to do a equals to comparison, we need to do a double equals. Now, in this font that I use in my in this editor, it combines the two equal signs together in one full symbol. That is a special case for this font. There are a couple of other fonts that also do the same thing, but they are two separate equal symbols next to each other in this text file. If I were to go into Notepad, for example, it should read as if panel color equals, and you can see there those are two separate equal symbols. That's what it should read as, but my font does special things and converts it to make it look more readable, basically. So just bear in mind that there is two equals, and that is used differently to the single equals. So single equals is to assign a value. Double equals is to compare equality of a value. So panel color equals to podium at, podium's array at podium index. So the podium that is at podium index in the array podiums dot player color. So here we are checking to see if the panel color of this panel is equal to, so double equals equal to the player color of the podium at this podium index. We need to add a body to this if condition. So add some braces, and this will only get called, excuse me, goodness me. This section will only get called if this condition holds true. And if it does, then we want to do something to this podium. What we want to do to this podium, we want to add to the player scores. So what we do is we go podiums at podium index, like that. So we're getting the podium that is at podium index in the array podiums, and we are going to access the player score, so the player score value that we had earlier, and we're going to add 1 to it. So podiums, podium index, so the podium at podium index in the array of podiums, the player score is of which we're going to then add to that 1 and associate it to it. So add and associate to with an additional 1. And if we hit save, I believe that should do the scoring for us. So whatever panels we have coloured in the top grid, whatever colour they are associated to, should theoretically do all of the maths for us. So let's quickly check that. So everyone has a score of 0 at the moment. If I select Mrs. Yaka and then add in a selection of 13, we find a null reference exception. Why do we have a null reference exception? We have an object reference not set to an instance of an object. Why is that? Why do you say that, sir? That's cool. Why do you say that? That is that. That is that. And it's saying, here is the problem. Have we not referenced something? Do we have all of the panels defined in game? Where is our game? Do we have all the panels? Oh, yeah, there we go. Because we changed the panels, didn't we? We broke the panels earlier with the button. So we broke the panels earlier and we recreated some panels. So if you now look at the game component, you'll see that our panels array is, well, there's a lot of none in it. There's only the one panel in it left. So if we then, let's just reset that, start back down to 0. So change the size to 0 and it basically clears that entire array out. Now let's quickly reassociate all those panels. So I'm going to do it the quick way again. So lock the inspector so that the inspector is permanently on this game object until we unlock it. Then we are free to select all the panels that we want over on the left hand side. So select all of the panels, then drag all of the panels into the panels array. They all get associated in, and then unlock when you are finished. So now on the game component, we now have all 25 panels reassociated after we recreated them. Hit save project, clear out the errors, hit the play button, go back into play mode, and then hopefully now, if we click Mrs. Yaka and then click 13, Look at that! Look at that! So we have now changed the panel to the right color for the player, and we've also added a point to that player. So if for whatever reason we actually got that wrong and it was supposed to be Whiskers that's supposed to have had that panel, then we click on the Whiskers panel, click on 13, and the point goes back the other way. Mrs. Yak is now down to 0, Whiskers is now on to 1. So now you can just keep going like this, like this. Dog along name here can do all this. Box can do this. Mrs. Yak can have a few points there as well. Now normally in Pal Quiz Attack you don't keep taking cells like this. Obviously you can keep doing things afterwards. Yes, in this one it's an immediate change, Egg, rather than being resolved after the fact. So whenever you click it, it will recalculate. Now if you wanted it to be an after the fact operation, then you can do that on a separate action. So you can have a button somewhere, or you can have a key that triggers the event, and your event in that case would be all of this. So you can have two different operations essentially, because this is what this is kind of doing. It's do two different operations. So you've got it's changing the panel color here, and you have recalculating of the score here. So in a slightly better, more programmer oriented world, you would probably make this section an entire method for recalculating the score, and then you'll be able to change it so that you can go, well, if I want it to change immediately on select panel, then I can call it here, or if I want to call it on a separate thing like pressing a button on my keyboard, then I can make the button press do just that method. So you can mix and match at that point. So that bit there is the color change, and that bit there is the score recalculation. At the moment, I'm just leaving them both in the same place. The only other thing you probably may have noticed, if you may have gone into play mode, so let me go back out of play mode and go back in. What happens? What happens if I select a panel, but I haven't selected a podium yet? That happens. We get a null reference exception, which is sort of like what we had earlier, but this one I was expecting to happen because I knew it was going to happen the way I coded it. We get a null reference exception. It says object reference not set to an instance of an object. If you double click it, then we find the culprit line is line number 26, and it says panel.background.color is selected podium.playerColor. Well, we haven't selected a podium yet, so what is the value of selected podium? So by default, for all of these sorts of fields, they will have a default value assigned, and every object type will default to the value of null. Side note, modern C#, which Unity is not currently using, but modern C# has flipped this definition. Modern C# objects are always assigned to a value unless you explicitly declare them as nullable. In older C#, which Unity is currently part of, by default objects are nulled. Side note over. So for those coming from a different version of the language, that is a difference there to worry about. But yes, in this case, we haven't selected a podium yet, so selected podium by default is set to null. So if you want to protect against things like that happening, then what you can do is put a if condition at the front of everything and get out of the fact. So to protect against that, you can go if, so we're doing a condition, so we're using if selected podium, so that's the thing we want to check, and we want to check to see if it is equal to null. So we're using double equals as the equality operation, so we're doing a comparison to see if it is the same thing as null. So if selected podium is equal to null, open up a body for the if condition, so this is the bit that will only get executed if that is true. Then we want to return. This is a special keyword that means that we are ending the method and we don't want it to continue. Now, technically, there should also be a return value or return value for it, but because this method is a void type, as in it is typeless, it has nothing to return. So we don't need to return anything else with this statement. What it means is once we hit this return, the execution of this method stops and it goes back to where it was above itself. So if selected podium is null, then do nothing. Nice. Okay, I think that's reasonable. So now if we go back in, we're actually in play mode at the moment, so it's going to recompile and do everything. I'm going to just sanity stop and restart. And then if I try and select a podium now, then nothing happens and nothing goes bang. So that's a bit safer. But as soon as we select a podium, then that podium is in control. Beautiful. Nice. That seems to work okay. So yeah, the only other thing we need to worry about for panel quiz attack really is that attack chance that was mentioned before, which does a different thing, and it changes a cell to be yellow, or in the other variants it's got a bordered yellow or something along those lines to indicate that it has returned to an open state of play. So we can do this a couple of ways. Let me do one way right now. So you can also, as Tantasar says, you probably could do, instead of this, how we got if this is equal to null return, alternatively, let me just comment this out for the moment, you can also do if selected podium is not equal to null. As you can see here, my font really does make things look very nice. Let me go into Notepad so you can see what it actually should look like. It should read as if selected podium not equal to, as in exclamation mark equals. That is how you say not equal to. It looks a bit weird, but this is the sort of the not operator generally, and we're doing a equality comparison. So the total symbology for that is a exclamation mark equals, and you do that. So if open parentheses selected podium exclamation mark equals, i.e. not equal to null, do your parentheses, your braces open and close, and then do stuff here. That is another way you can do it. However, some people also would say don't do that, because then you are introducing unnecessary nesting into your code, and you shouldn't stray too far over to the right hand side of the code screen. But again, that's an entirely preferential thing. Your mileage may vary, depends on what you want to do. All I did here in my case is just do this, so that if it is a null podium, then just get the hell out of Dodge and we don't need to worry about it anymore. So yeah, in my editor it actually appears like this. This is still two symbols. It is still an exclamation mark and an equal symbol next to each other, but the font is clever enough to know that it should look like that instead. It also has other special things as well, like if you want to do a greater than or equal to operation, then it forms it like that. That there is technically a greater than symbol followed by an equals symbol. It's just one of those things that this font does. If you're interested in the font, it's called Fira Code. There's also like Fira Code Retina as well as an option. That's the font that it uses. But we're not getting into that because that is more interesting. That's not more interesting. It's just more technical things that we don't need to worry about. So yeah, we need to do attack chance. So the last thing we need to do then is attack chance for now. So attack chance will have its own colour. I'm going to do it the same way as Clive's presentation does, and it changes it to a yellow colour to indicate going back to open state. So for that, I'm going to do public colour. So we want to define a colour for the attack chance. And we're going to define the variable as attack chance colour. So public colour, attack chance colour. I'm going to save that. And what we're going to do in the select panel. Are we going to do it by select panel here? I think we should, which means this does get a bit more complicated, because I could have a extra shortcut. So if I wanted the attack chance to be based off of you control click, or if you shift click, then you can do something like that. Or you could theoretically do it when selected podium is null. And then you could have a special key that resets whatever the selected podium is. Depends really how you want to do it. You could do it in multiple ways. The way I'm going to do it is going to be, I'm going to have a button on screen that says go into attack chance mode. And then once that is, then you can go, the next click will be an attack chance. Or you could do it as podium's length equals 21 and only do it once. No, that's disgusting, Egg. No. No, we're not doing it like that. Oh, you not by podium's length, you mean by select the number of podiums that have a colour is what you're asking for there, Egg. But again, that's a bit of a disgusting way to do it. Because you could theoretically want to do an attack chance whenever you want. As you can see, there's not really been much restriction here on the real game rules. Like earlier, we declared the panels as just being a number, so you could have as many panels as you wanted the game. So I'm just leaving that open to interpretation rather than being hard baked into a very specific rule set, that's all. So what I'm going to do is you've fallen behind, so I'm going to drop out now and catch up the last hour. Okay, cool. Hopefully you should be able to catch up. I know this last hour has been a bit of a gobbledygook where I've been jumping about doing different things. But hopefully we can get somewhere that it works a bit better. But thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you can catch up, and we'll see you later, Matt. So we've got an attack chance colour. And we also want to change whether attack chance is active. So I'm actually going to make that a public boolean, because then we can actually adjust that by a button. So public bool. Bool here is short for boolean, which means a true or false value. So that's what we're going to define as. So public bool, and this is going to be called attack chance active. So this bool will describe whether or not the attack chance phase is active in play. By default, for a Boolean value, now we were talking here earlier that these have a default value of null. Default value for color is actually clear, and clear is defined as black with full transparency, so you don't get to see it at all. Default value for bool is false, which is actually good for us in this case because we don't want attack chance on by default. However, if you did want to just define what the default value is, you can do so. You can do it here. So if you want to have the default value for attack chance active to be true, then you can do that. Although we can also define that in the Unity editor afterwards anyway. So it doesn't matter in this case. We're just going to leave that as public bool, attack chance active, and then end the line with semicolon. Okay, then what we're going to do is come down to select panel. Now, before we get to the selected podium, we want to check to see if attack chance is active. Because if attack chance is active, we don't really care who is in control. We just need to know that attack chance is active so we can reset it. So we go and add a new condition at the top of this method before we talk to the selected podium. We go if attack chance active. So this is just a Boolean value, and you could theoretically do this whole declaration as attack chance active double equal to true. So you're doing an equality comparison of this Boolean value being equal to true. However, you don't need to be as explicit as that because this is already a Boolean value, and the return of what I have selected here now is also a Boolean value. You can actually shortcut this. You don't need to have this part here. You can just do that. So this will be if attack chance active, and that's all you need to have because that's a Boolean value and that's all the if condition is looking for. If it is active, then we open and close some braces so we can do some special code here, which is only if this is active. Then what we want to do is go onto the panel that is currently here, onto the background image of that panel, to the color of that background, we want to change that to be equal to the color that we've defined here, the attack chance color. End the line with semicolon. And I suppose what we also want to do is disable attack chance, because technically it's only a one-shot thing. So once attack chance has been activated and we've selected a panel, then we can turn it off. So we go attack chance active equals false. End the line. Hello there, not a jumble numbers. Welcome. So that becomes if attack chance active, set the color of the background of the panel to the correct color for attack chance, and then set it back to false. Now, you will note that we still need to calculate the score after this. But if we don't have a selected podium or whatever, then it's gonna this here is going to overwrite that color again. So what I'm going to do is do that sort of optimization that we mentioned a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to move this score recalculation out into a separate method so that we can do it in either case. So let's create a new method. This one is going to be a private method. So nothing else outside of this class needs to know about it, so it can be private. So we go private, void. Again, we don't need to return anything. And we're going to call this recalculate score. So the full method name is going to be called recalculate score. And we need to define some parameters because it is a method, but we don't care. So we're going to declare it as parameterless, i.e. open and close parentheses. The method needs a body, so open and close the braces to do that. So we now have a method called recalculate score. And then what I'm going to do is take this selection here from line 42 down to line 57 inclusive. And I'm going to go and cut with Control X on Windows. And then I'm going to select now on line 47. I'm going to paste Control V. So that moves all of the recalculate score functionality into the recalculate score method. Now to go back to where we were, once we've changed the panel background color for the selected podium color, we do need to recalculate score. So let's say that recalculate score like that. So recalculate score, open close parentheses, semicolon. By the way, you're noticing that we're not actually talking to any objects at this point here. We're just calling this thing called recalculate score. It is always presumed you are talking about this object that we are currently in. So while we are here in this game script, in this game class, we are presumed to always be talking to the game. That's sort of the context of the language. If you wanted to be very specific about it, this is technically this dot recalculate score. This is the very specific way that it's actually doing it under the hood, where this is talking about this specific object, doing dots saying we're talking to this object, and then we're calling the method. But as I say, this is already presumed in the context of an object, so you don't need to have it. But if you want to have it there, just to be really clear about who you're calling, then by all means do include it. And we also need to make certain that once we've done the attack chance recoloring, that we recalculate the score as well. So let's go back up here, and in that if, then we go, once the color has changed, recalculate the score, and we also want to return here. We do not want to continue in this method, otherwise we will just recolor this panel to the selected podium color, which is not what we want. We want to change it just to the attack chance color. So long as attack chance is active, it will change the background color of the panel to attack chance, set that to false, and then recalculate the score down here. Then it will return. So return means it will no longer do no more in this method. However, if attack chance is not active, then if selected podium is null, if we've got no one selected at the moment, then return. We do not care. We do not want to continue anymore, because we need to have selected podium be something in order to do the next line. So if it's that, then return. However, if we're all good, then panel.background.color. So the color of the background for the panel should be set to the selected podium that we currently have dot player colors, the color of the selected podium, and then we recalculate the score at that point, which then rejigs the numbers to what we need. So all we need now is a button somewhere on the canvas that will then call game dot. Well, it will change the value of game.attackChanceActive and set that to true to make attack chance be an active thing. Okay, so let's go and do that then. Let's go over into here and let's create a button. So we're going to create a UI button Text Mesh Pro. And we're going to, where are we going to place that? We're going to place that somewhere. Let's put it over here for the time being. I could put this in a really specific place, but I'm going to leave it there for now. We're going to rename this as Attack Chance. So it's now called Attack Chance. I don't care about a transition, so I'm going to take the transition off. And then I'm going to change the text element to say Attack Chance. So I've just selected the text element, gone to the text input part of the Text Mesh Pro element and changed that to say Attack Chance. And you know what, I'm going to change the font of that. I'm going to change that to Alata from earlier, so that looks similar to the name font. Cool, that looks okay to me. And that, so then we go back to the button, so back to Attack Chance. Go back to the button onto its on click. We then go plus, so we want to add an event call on click. We want to drag in the game object into the target. Go to function. Go to game. Go to... hang on. Where is this? That should be there. Why is it not there? It should be runtime only. Why is attack chance not there? Should be there as a thing to change. Why is it not? Ooh, that's special. That should be there as a thing to change. I thought that should be there. Does it work as a property? No, not that one. That's interesting. I thought that would be working. Let me just change that as a property. Let me see what that does. It shouldn't. This shouldn't be it, but I'm just curious. Yeah, so that is it. Okay, that's curious. I did not think it was like that, but it is. You can tell I don't really use these event calls that much. I tend to define them more in code myself rather than manually hooking them up. But for a beginner, it's easier to understand to hook them up like this. So it actually works as a property. So let me just go back to where I was. So we had this defined like this before, and this is a field. And that's sort of the main type that you have to play with in Unity. Not type, member type, should I say, to play with. There is also a thing called a property, and a property has two main elements to it. It has a getter and it has a setter. In most cases, they basically function the same out in the outside world. So for people talking to properties, they basically exist as the same as fields do, but they are technically methods under the hood. So you can do something to get a value, and you can do something to set a value for a property, which is different to how a field works. So for now, all you need to worry about is changing the declaration to a basic property type. So change this, so instead of it saying public bool attack chance active semicolon, take the semicolon off, and then we want to start a new line. Open a brace, a squiggly bracket, and then inside of that we want to define a get with a semicolon, and we also define a set with a semicolon. This is the very basic template for a very basic property, which it's essentially exactly the same as a field. It just looks slightly different, but it's exactly the same functionally as the field was before. Technically, these gets and sets you can define as special methods to do things, but declared like this, it's essentially the same as a field, except those button events on the Unity side actually talk to these. And you can see the code is happy with that. It doesn't change anything about it. It's absolutely happy for that to be as it is. So we go back again to here. Once it's recompiled, onto the attack chance button with the game target set. Go to function game and go to attack chance active, and it gives you a boolean option here, a little toggle option. Click that to a tick to say we want to set attack chance active to true, and then hit save with Control S and also save the project to be certain. So that should now mean if we have the attack chance active by clicking the button first, then it should set a color, set a panel to a specific color. We haven't specified that color in the Unity editor yet, so let's quickly do that. Let's go to the game component, or game object, sorry. Now go to the game component over on the right hand side, and let's set the attack chance color to yellow. And again, watch out for the alpha value so that you're not caught out by that. Set the alpha value up to 100. So we have a yellow with full alpha, so opaque yellow. And I'm going to hit save again and hit save project. And now, hopefully, if we do it, we should be good. So first of all, let's test just clicking without selecting a podium. Hopefully that should still do the same as before, and it currently is. It's not complaining and it's doing nothing. Now let's select a podium. So we want to select Whiskers. Whiskers gets some points to the board. Now let's select Mrs. Yaka on the board. Obviously I'm not really playing the rules of the game at the moment. We'll select the dog. They get some points on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4. We need one more on the board, so box can have a square. So now this is where the attack chance would occur. So you would set a cell first, so box will have control and get that. And then attack chance would occur. So we now click attack chance to activate that mode. And now theoretically the next click we do should in big inverted commas should work. And it does. You've reset cell 13 to an attack chance yellow, and it's taken 1 point off of Whiskers. So now, this is basically all you need to do to run the main part of Panel Quiz, is the scoring system. Is it worth adding a highlight around the attack chance button to show it is active? Yes, theoretically, yes, that should be a good thing to do. So what you will need to do for that is, let me do that. What we can do is, let me make the button a bit bigger so it's a bit more obvious to see. And I'm going to change the font size to be a bit bigger as well. And maybe even bold text as well. Yeah, that's better. We can really see that now. You know what, I might even do caps as well. Attack chance. Really, really make it obvious that it's an attack chance going on. Like that. And yeah, what we can do now is activate the color of that. And we could also theoretically do a podium color indicator as well while we're thinking about that, so that we know what podium we have selected before we do it. So let's do the attack chance first. So what we're going to do is we're going to specify the button here in game, I think is the best way to do it. So we go public button, and we're going to call it the attack chance button. And you're going to bring that all together with all the other attack chance stuff. So we have the attack chance button, the attack chance color, and the attack chance active. And you know what? We're going to bring the update method back in. So void update. Yeah, by the way, if you don't declare a particular accessor type, so public or private, then it is assumed private in a class. So you don't have to use the term private at the front if you don't need to. So we're going to use the update method. And what we're going to do is I'm going to change the color of the button based on it being attack chance or not. So we go attack chance button. This is in the update method. So just a reminder for what update does. Update is called once every frame wow, words are hard. They're called once for every frame while the game is running, or should I say while this game object is running and active. So the attack chance button dot now button has a image, so it should have on here an image property. It does, so don't go dot image dot color. So attack chance button dot image dot color equals the attack chance color, like that, and end the line. However, what this will do is actually set the color of the button to be the attack chance color all the time. We want to change it to be white, let's say, when it's not active. So we actually want to do an if, and we're going to now introduce an else condition as well, which is a block that is executed if the if condition doesn't hold true. So if, let's go if attack chance active. So that's the condition we're looking for, is if attack chance is active. We then go and open a squiggly bracket. We then go inside of that, we go attack chance button dot image dot color is equal to the attack chance color. However, this is only called if this is active. If it's not active, then we can also do this. If we go else, so the else condition, which if it is immediately following an if condition, this block will be called if this is false. If this does not hold true, then this block will get called instead. And what we can do now is go attack chance button dot image dot color in the same way, and we can go and equal to a color of our choosing, and thankfully Unity does provide you some defaults just out of the box. So if we want to make it white, we can actually just use the constant that he had defined. So we go color, which is the name of the type, and inside of that they have a default value called white. So you go color dot white, end with a semicolon, and that will set the button color to be white specifically. So now if we go back to the game, and so long as we define that attack chance button in our game component, so you can see we've got the new field down here. Let's drag the attack chance onto that, like that. Hit save, go to save project as always, and then go into play mode. Then we go green, let's add some onto the board like that. And if we want to activate attack chance, then we click the button, and it's gone yellow to say that attack chance is now active. And then now when we click on a panel, it sets that panel to yellow, and now attack chance is not active. It's gone back to white, just like that. And just for clarity, let's add in that panel indication as well, so that we know what panel we have selected. So we're going to add in an image a bit like the button. So with the game selected, go to UI image, and we're going to drag it over here. And we're going to go drag that to there. Luckily, there is snapping involved on Unity, which is quite nice. So it snaps to the same sizes and dimensions as previous elements. We can go like that. We can go like that. And we can do that. And bring that into place there. And then this will be just our attack chance, our panel color indicator. And we're just going to use a... You know what? We're going to use that simple blank box as the same thing, because it is already 9-sliced. There is a toggle type that you can use, which probably would be quite useful in this situation. However, they are finicky, and I just didn't want to introduce new things at this point. I just wanted to introduce things that I know work and that people are already going to be familiar with if they're following this tutorial. Might be worth disabling once it's active. Again, depends on whether they want to change the game and have multiple attack chances throughout the game, because you might want to play like a panel quiz attack 64 and have 2 attack chances. So it's entirely your decision whether you want to have it disable or not. I'm just giving you a bare bones implementation, and then you can investigate further from that point onwards. So that's going to be the panel, the podium indicator. I'm going to call it that. So with that element selected, we just hit F2 to change the name. We've changed it now to podium indicator. Let's go back to the game component, and we're going to have a new property called public image, because it is an image, and we're going to say that is going to be a podium indicator. So that's the name of the image property, or field, sorry, and end the line with a semicolon. And then in a similar vein down here in the update, we're going to have another condition, and we're going to go if selected podium is not equal to null. Again, I'm going to open up Notepad for you so you can see how that looks. So that really should read as if selected podium equals null, which again, if I'm reading that properly, means if this object is not equal to null, so not equal to, different to equal to, then it will execute what is in this block. So if selected podium is not equal to null, open and close the block, then you can go podium indicator dot color. Podium indicator is an image and it has a color, so you go podium indicator talk to it dot color equals the selected podium, so the podium we have selected, dot the player color, which is already selected and suggested from before. End the line with a semicolon. And we could also have here an extra condition, so else, so if there is no selected podium, then we can change that so that the podium indicators dot color, so again podium indicator dot color, and this time we're going to change this to read as color dot black. So with no podium selected, the default color will be black color rather than white, or whatever podium it is. However, if there is a podium selected, then its color will be whatever podium is selected. What's the most that should be included in the update void? I'm guessing the less you put into it, the better. Depends, Egg. It really isn't just a simple answer. Because if you put a lot of things on like a single button press, then you are potentially introducing a lot of work to do on one single frame rather than over many frames. So in those cases, if you're doing a lot on a single frame, you'll get a sudden jutter and then it'll come back to life. Whereas if you're doing a lot in update, it will be slower overall, probably, but will be more consistent frame rate overall. So it isn't just a simple answer. Plus, also, these properties here are clever enough, Unity's properties like these are clever enough to understand if there is a change or not. So even though we are associating this value to be basically the same every frame, it knows that they're the same, so if they are, it won't actually do anything else under the hood. It won't rebatch things. So it has optimizations already baked into their system. So don't worry about this being a bit lazy that we keep calling it every update. Just it works for what we need to do. We can obviously change it to so that it is based off of every click you do, but this is a responsive UI, so no matter what we do outside of this system, so outside of this, however we change attack chance or however we change the selected podium, this update, it doesn't care. So long as the attack chance active is set and so long as the selected podium value is selected, then it's fine. So this is nice self-contained code that will definitely just work on every update. And if you wanted to just have this be done on a specific command, then you can just move this out of an update loop into a separate method that's not called update, and you just call that method. So it's just simple. It just works like that. And now I need to quickly associate the podium indicator to the game. So with the game object selected up here in sample scene, come down to podium indicator, property field, and drop in the podium indicator. Hit save as always. Save project. Go into play mode, and then you can see the current podium is dark, so there's no podium selected, and attack chance is not active because it is white. So let's select box. It's gone red, so red is now in control, and you can go click, 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 click. You can go to whiskers, go click, click, click. You go dog, click, 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 click. And we go Mrs. Yakka, click, 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 click. We want to attack chance. We click, attack chance has done its thing. And podium still in control is Mrs. Yakka. So there you go. How does it reset back to black? There is nothing at the moment to reset back to black, so there is no reselect. There's no reset of podium. However, it is very easy to do. If we want to add another button to do that, let's say we just have another button below the podium indicator. That is podium reset, for example. Let's just do another one down here. Call this podium reset. Change the text here to say podium reset, like that. We can introduce a... Well, in fact, we don't need to introduce a new method because we already have the method. It's already there. Selected podium will already get set based off of this. So all we need to do is add an event. Game is the target. The function is game select podium. And the object is none. So selecting none in the Unity side of things means null in the C# side of things. So what podium reset will do when you click it is it will set the current active podium, the current selected podium, to null, which then should mean that there is no podium in control. So now if we go back into play mode, so we can go select a podium as Mrs. Yakka, do that, and then click podium reset, and it goes object of type Unity Engine.object cannot be converted to type. Oh, you can't do that? Seriously? That's disgusting. I thought you really could do that with that, but no. No, you cannot. There's always some stupid caveats to this. Okay, well, we can still introduce some code to do it, so we can introduce a method called reset podium then to do what we need to do. So let's do that. So let's go public void reset podium. So creating new method, public because we want other things to talk to it or to call it, void because it has no return, reset podium is the name, and we don't need to give it a type A parameter, so just open and close parentheses, open up the body with the curly braces, and here we want to go selected podium is equal to null. So what that does is associates the value of null to the current selected podium variable in our member. Hit save. Let's go back into Unity. And once it's recompiled, then we'll go back here and we're going to add the Unity event. Drop in the game target. Go to game and we call reset podium. Hit save as always and save project. Go into play mode. I thought that would work, but apparently no, because it tries to do a type alteration even though it knows it's null. It's very stupid. So Mrs. Yakka has some points on the board. Dog has some points on the board. And if we hit podium reset, it goes back to black. So now no podium is selected. If we try and select any of the cells, then we're all good. Brilliant. Could you just set the podium indicator to reset itself on click? Pop Ram Comedy, unfortunately that's not how the game works in this case. So let me just quickly go over how the rules of the game would work, because you don't necessarily just get one cell in this game at a time. You get potentially multiple depending on how you capture. So let's say Whiskers takes cell 13, Mrs. Yakka takes cell 14. Now, in this next case, Whiskers has control of the board and can now take a cell, take one of the panels. Due to the rules of the game, there is actually only one cell they can actually play, and that is cell 15, is panel 15. If they do that, they also create a line between, from one end to another of their own colour with other colours in between, and by doing that, they actually take that colour as well. So you go colour, and then they will also take that, and then it would end up resetting the podiums at that point. Like you click on the color indicator and then it does all the things. Yes, technically, Pop Random Comedy, yes, you can indeed add in all of the extra logic to do all the capturing and that. That's a little more complicated. That's a little more complicated than just the thing. But yes, theoretically, yes, you can go click the thing and that resets the podium. So you can definitely do that in one fell sweep. But yes, you can go click on the click on the color indicator and then it does all the things. Well, yeah, you can, instead of this being a separate image and separate button, this could just be a button and the image's color is changed by that. So yeah, we could do that. I mean, let me quickly change that. We can get rid of this image. We don't need that. Bring podium reset back up there. The game's image for podium indication is now that podium reset button, like that. Save, hit play, and now the color of the podium reset button is now based off of whatever color podium is active. And if you hit the podium reset, it goes back to black. So you can also combine them into the one element as well. The world is your oyster once you know how to do it. So that's basically how it all works. And that's all of the major functionality you need for doing a simple scoreboard for Panel Quiz Attack 25. Now, there's obviously more things we can do, including the actual puzzles that appear on screen, doing the final question as well, how that works. But those are slightly more complicated things to worry about, which we can get to. We'll get to that on the next stream, I'd say. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, you could also hook up some sound effect playback as well. I don't have any of the sounds that are part of Panel Quiz Attack, but we can quickly do some triggering of sounds. That is a very simple thing we can do. So let me just quickly find a sound that we can play. A ding. There we go. We'll find a ding sound on Creative Commons 0. Can we just find one that's a short sample size, please? Like that. Nope. 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 Yeah, that'll do. That's a good ding sound. We'll go with that. Obviously, you can find your own ding sounds. I'm just going to take that off screen while I log in. That is if I can remember my password. Yeah, there we go. I can remember my password. Download. Yeah, this is a Creative Commons 0 file, so you can just go and find it and just use it yourself. There's literally nothing. No licensing you need to worry about. We need to create a new folder in a moment, so let me put that into the game folder. I'm going to rename it as well as Ding Dong because it's going to be better that way. So call it Ding Dong. And we're going to create a new folder in _game that we can store our sounds in. So let's create a sounds folder and drop in Ding Dong. Like that. So to make a panel make a sound when we click on it, we need to add a audio source onto a panel. So let's go to the grid, go to the panel, and we want to add a new component called audio source. So all I did there was go to add component and start typing audio source, and found it and clicked it and set it on. We then need to give it an audio clip, and thankfully it already knows that Ding Dong is an audio sound asset, so it understands that as an audio clip. So let's set Ding Dong to that. We want to take it off of Play on Awake though. We don't want to play the sound as soon as we start the game, so take that off, otherwise you're going to hear 25 dings played at the same time, which is going to be quite loud. It's basically locking.wav at that point. And as you can see, it's got a blue line and it has the plus symbol on the icon there, so it is an override to the prefab. So we need to add that to the prefab, just like that. Go to overrides and click apply all. And then the other thing we need to do to make it play when we click it is add a new event to the button. So in the on click, we need to add a second event call. This time, we're just talking to ourselves. We're talking to this audio source. So you can actually drag from this audio source header here, drag that into the target here, like that. And then click on function, go to audio source, and there should be a method here called play. So be able to just click dot play. It's an override, it's got the blue line, so we need to apply that. So go to overrides and apply all, and that should now be an event on all of the panels. Let's quickly check that over. Yep, on all of the panels. So now, if we go into play mode, let's select Whiskers, and then let's select a panel. Oh, I've got mute audio off, so take that off. There we go. We now have it playing a sound whenever we do a thing on the panel. Just like that. That's pretty cool, isn't it? It's pretty cool, pretty nifty. Now, we don't have it doing different sounds for different things, because technically it should play a different sound for the different podiums and for the attack chance. However, if you want to get into that, it is a simple change. There is an audio clip property on the audio source. I'm just wondering, I could probably leave this as homework. If you want to, try and figure out how to change the audio clip on an audio source. Then you should be able to with all the information you have in this stream. Because we've now got a color per podium, so you can in theory set an audio clip per podium. I will tell you that the type for an audio clip is just called audio clip with a capital A and a capital C. Then what you do, you'll be able to set that on the game. Well, you already set the selected podium. The podium will have an audio clip sound. Then when you select one of the panels, instead of it triggering on the button press, you can have it in your game method to change the audio clip and then play the sound. Or you can do a play one shot. So I'm going to leave that as maybe a little bit of reading up for you to try and figure out how to do that. Like I say, the type for the asset is called audio clip. The type for the audio source itself is called audio source. And you should, in theory, be able to specify a different sound for each podium and also for attack chance, and then have that change and play out when you click on one of the panels. So if you can do that, that is your extra homework. That is your extra homework for this following week, if you want to do that. When we return on the third week, I will have that implemented in my project so you can see how I did it and see how it's different to how you may have done it. But this should be sort of similar in the same way as I've done it. As I say, colour, here's your hint, colour is what you're looking for to sort of follow along the same line. We've already done colours for everything. You should also now be able to do the same thing with audio clips. So thank you very much for following along with that. I hope you've had some good fun with that. What we can do next time is we're going to add in animators to the podiums so that they pulse while they are active, while they're the active podium, so it's a bit more obvious that they are in control rather than having this podium option over here. And then we can maybe get into the nitty-gritty of how to calculate the captures yourself. So we're getting more into the nitty-gritty of the coding for it, so how it does the capturing itself. So you just click one cell and it does all the magic for you. And then we'll be getting into the world of, probably you'll be getting into the world of coroutines at that point as well, if you're interested in that kind of thing. So that is where we're going to leave it. I don't know if Ben is actually live on stream yet or not. He has said he has going live on the announcement, so I presume he is live on Twitch. So we can go and raid Ben now. So next week we're going to be getting into more of the nitty-gritty of this. Let's say getting animators on the podiums, maybe getting into the logic of how to do the captures of the panel numbers. And yeah, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. I know it's been a bit of a long episode again, but it's just getting through the dirge. And hopefully you're going to be picking up a bit more speed. If you have any more information on how any of the code that I've presented works, then I will be around as always on the Discord do hit me up on there if you have any worries, if you've got any sort of compile errors, if things aren't working like they should be, just ask in there and I or someone else will be able to help you out. Thank you very much. I'm going to get myself some food because I'm rather hungry. Whiskers has already been fed, so she's been lucky. I've been Ash the Bash. Go and enjoy Google That with Ben. I'll see you back here on Monday. We might be doing some Duel on Monday, so I'll be back here on Monday for some Duel, which may or may not happen while Matt's stream is on, so might be a thing. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Have a good bank holiday weekend. And I'll catch you all later. Let me quickly do the raid message, though, so you can all go and raid. Ben? Whew. Right. Oh, it's been a long episode. Thank you very much for persevering with my not educatoriness. And I'll catch you all later. Bye!